today. Um, let's start from the top. All right. Well, today is August 4th, and we are taking a look at a few major items. We did a lot of great progress on our last meeting where we talked about the cannabis equity grants, and we were able to figure out one of the priorities for those grant distributions. We'll continue conversation today. We have just some basic housekeeping for us. If I can just get back to my, here we go, orientation notes. Click, virtual life, you have to click back and forth between a bunch of screens. All right, so between every agenda item, we will have public comment. Please note that public comment will be held after, agenda item. If a member of the public would like to make public comment, and that is not on the agenda item, that will go under the general public comment at the end of the meeting. Members of the public will be given 2 minutes to make comments. We will let you guys know when you have 30 seconds left. For those members of the community that are joining us online and would prefer to submit their comments in writing, you can write in your comments in the chat box. The comments will be read out loud by the meeting facilitator. So that would be David or Ray. Note that the chat function will be enabled during public comment sections and will otherwise be disabled during committee talk. For those who are joining online and would like to verbally express their public comments, please dial in to 408-418-9388. We will also have that number displayed periodically. You should be able to see it right now, actually, on this oversight committee meeting agenda. And then you would be asked to submit an access code. The access code is 146-289-6265. When prompted, then press *3, and then you'll be instructed to wait, that you'll be put into a queue. You'll hear a voice that says you are unmuted, and in that case, you can start your 2-minute public comment, and then you'll be alerted at 30 seconds, but at the end of 2 minutes, it will cut you off. For those who are already joining by phone, same thing. If you're already on the phone, just press #3 and you'll be added into the queue in order to give your public comment. All right, and to our committee members, to support this discussion and ensure everyone has a chance to participate, we may request that you please that you actually physically raise your hand, because I can see you guys, or you can also digitally raise your hand and you'll be put into a queue, and our team will help to alert if you guys have something to add to the conversation. But I'm gonna do my best to view you guys in the gridded form, so that we can call on you guys periodically throughout the conversation. Again, this is still the virtual meeting space, so in the event that I do miss you, please do just speak up, and we'll find order from there. All right. Just a reminder that on the item number 5, 3 of our voting members will be recusing themselves from the conversation, and then we'll be bringing them back in afterwards. So I guess we will officially start the meeting with voting member roll call, which will be read out loud by the meeting facilitator.
And Madam Chair, before we get started, just a quick note. For anyone who's hearing beeping sounds in the background, it's just to indicate that people are dropping off the call or joining the call. So just ignore it as much as you can, but that's what that sound is, in case you were wondering.
Got it.
David, you're muted if you were.
Let's see. Thank you. So we'll go ahead with roll call. Seat 8, Ali Jamalian. Present.
Seat 9, Aaron Flynn.
Present.
Seat 10, Jessica Cry.
Present.
Seat 11, Doug Block. Doug Block. Okay, not here. Seat 12, Sean Richard. Sean, are you with us? Okay, I think he might be still trying to join us. Seat 13, Nina Parks.
Present.
Thank you. Seat 14, Jesse Stout.
Very present.
Thanks, Jesse. Seat 15, Teresa Foglio.
Present.
And seat 16, Sarah Pine.
Present.
So I do believe we have a quorum and can proceed.
Fantastic. Thank you. All right. First item on the agenda is to review the agenda as is. Let us know if there's anything that should be added to it, and then we will go to public comment about the agenda. How does it look to you guys?
Good.
Good. Thank you, Teresa.
Motion to adopt the agenda.
All right. Is there, hold on.
Second.
Wait. We have public comment about the agenda. Sorry, guys. Any public comment on the agenda? All right. Hearing none, seeing none, we can go ahead to Ali. You want to make that motion one more time?
Motion to adopt the agenda as is.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Aaron. All right. So, where are we at? Do we want to
We can do this by grid, or I can call each name, Madam Chair. So I'll
call? Yeah, call each name just because
Call
I'm having trouble viewing everybody right now.
Okay. Seat 8, Ali.
Yes.
Seat 9, Aaron.
Aye.
Seat 10, Jessica.
Aye.
Seat 13, Nina.
Aye.
Seat 14, Jesse.
Aye.
Seat 15, Teresa.
Aye.
Seat 16, Sarah.
Aye.
And just in case, Sean, are you with us? Seat 12?
David, this is Nikesh. It's my understanding that he's trying to join, so when he does, we'll let everyone know.
Okay. So the agenda passes unanimously with those present.
Thank you, David. All right, moving along. Item number 3 on the agenda: approval of meeting minutes from July's meeting. Everyone should have gotten that emails a few days ago, so hopefully you guys got a chance to take a look at it. Let us know.
Very quick. Okay.
What's up, Ray?
You're right. Bear with me for a second.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I believe Ray may be on the other line with Sean Richard, so
Got it.
So sorry to interrupt everyone. I've been trying to get committee member Richard to become the panelist and join the conversation. Can I try something very quick with him? Bear with me for a minute, please. I'm sorry for the interruption. Let me try something very quick. committee member Sean Richard, can you hear me from the WebEx platform? Madam Chair, my apologies for the interruption. Please proceed.
Okay. All right. Does anybody have any corrections to the minutes?
I'll make a motion to adopt the, oh, wait.
Oh.
Public comment, right?
Yeah, I know.
Nothing.
Good catch.
Yeah. So, I mean, basically, no one so far sees anything about the minutes. If there's any members of the public that have any comments on the meeting minutes, that can also be found on the Office of Cannabis website. For you guys that don't know, please go ahead and take a look at that. But the floor is open for public comment. Just a reminder, if you want to make a public comment, you can either raise your hand or give a call in and press *3. If we can get access, hopefully to that number again. Yeah, so many things. Okay, hold on 1 second. Cool. Reminder that phone number is, what is that phone number? Sorry.
It's 408-418-9388. And access code is 146-289-6265. And then please hit *3.
Perfect. All right. Okay. Well, seeing nobody raise their hand and seeing there's no one in the queue, correct, Ray or Dave? You guys don't see anybody popping in?
Madam Chair, there's no speaker line up in the queue.
Cool. So now, yeah, we can totally make those motions. Aaron, did you want to do that?
Yes, I'll make a motion to adopt last meeting's minutes as written.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Teresa.
Notes, I think it was Sarah that.
Sarah, sorry. Thank you, Sarah. No, it was.
Oh, my apologies, Madam Chair. I just saw a hand raising in the attendee list. May
Okay.
I pull this speaker up and see if this individual indeed has public comment on this item?
On
Please
this.
hold on for 1 second. Yes.
All right. Cool. Yes.
Caller, you're up for public comment, and your 2 minutes starts now.
Hi, my name is Will. I go to school in San Francisco. I'm calling to demand that you divest cannabis business tax dollars away from the SFPD. I mean, it's completely insane that you've got people in jail for cannabis legal, and the money is going to the same system that incarcerated all these people. I mean, it's insulting. The war on drugs is this complete, insane, racist thing, and it's crazy that the SFPD can cash in on it with cannabis dollars. Yeah, completely divest money from the SFPD, reinvest the money into Black and Brown communities in SF.
Thanks.
Thanks.
All right. Okay. Any other public comment?
Madam Chair, there's another individual in the line. Let me pull him up right now, okay?
Okay.
Hi, my name is Mary, and I live in San Francisco, District 9. I'm calling to demand the divestment of our cannabis business tax dollars away from the SFPD. At a time when the city is calling to defund, disarm, and disband the SFPD. This includes tax revenue from cannabis businesses to the SFPD. The war on drugs began in the 80s as a racist way to lock up more Black and brown folks. And cannabis tax dollars going to the SFPD is just another way for police to cash in on the war on drugs. The speed to police pipeline needs to be dismantled today. The SFPD has proven that they will not protect the city's cannabis business. 22 of the 37 licensed cannabis businesses in the city were broken into since May 29th. The SFPD did nothing for these businesses. In fact, when the first break-ins happened on Friday the 29th, the SFPD did not inform businesses so they could take action. Instead, break-ins continued over the weekend. This proves that the money that is given to the SFPD from cannabis business taxes does very little for safety for those businesses. 2 weeks after these cannabis businesses were broken into across the West Coast, SFPD only identified one individual, proving that they are not actually providing safety to these cannabis businesses. After the past month of protests and public hearings, it is no longer possible to pretend that a silent majority of San Franciscans see policing and incarceration as solutions to our city's problems, or want to see our city's funds spent on the SFPD rather than on reinvestment in education, social services, and community resources. We call the SF Office of Cannabis to completely divest money from the SFPD and reinvest this money into Black and Brown communities.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you. Mary. Okay, so quick reminder for folks, this public comment is solely for just moving us through the agenda item with the approval of the minutes from last meeting. We will have a update. We will have an update, FYI, from SFPD and the Office of Cannabis in regards to the break-ins and everything, and there will be public comment during that portion as well. So just for the purpose of us being able to get to that portion, if you are not making public comment in regards to the meeting minutes, please save it for that agenda item. But your comments are completely heard, and I 100% hear you. Okay. Ray, do we have any other ones in the queue?
We do. We do have one individual waiting in line.
Okay.
I'm going to unmute this individual and check if this comment is for item 3.
Okay.
Hello, speaker. You are unmuted now. But before you start your public comment, we would like to give you a general reminder that on this comment section, it's solely for item 3 on the agenda, which means it's only for approval of the minutes for the last meeting. So if your comment is for this item particularly, you may start now.
Hi, I need to make a public comment later in the meeting. You can take me off the queue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, there's no individual waiting in line. Please proceed.
Very good. Okay. So, Aaron, did you want to make that motion?
Make a motion to approve the minutes from last meeting as written.
Okay. And then who?
I'll second the motion.
All right. Thank you, Sarah. And then if you want to take a roll call, and then we'll.
Seat 8, Ali.
Aye.
Seat 9, Aaron.
Aye.
Seat 10, Jessica.
Aye.
Seat 13, Nina.
Aye.
Seat 14, Jesse. Seat 15, Teresa.
Aye.
Seat 16, Sarah.
Aye.
And Sean, are you with us? Seat 12? Okay, so the minutes pass unanimously.
All right. Thank you, David. Okay, so we are going to move on to number 4, which is going to be an interesting update. Public safety update from the Office of Cannabis and members of law enforcement to provide an update concerning public safety and what has transpired since all of those break-ins has happened in the beginning of all of this. So in the beginning of the uprisings. So I'm going to hand it off to the Office of Cannabis to walk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So right now, I just unmute Captain Waring, and I believe she will be presenting on this item. And right now, everyone should be able to see the screen from Jeremy from my office is going to flip the presentation for Captain Waring.
I think I'm going to start the presentation.
Okay.
Can you hear me, everyone?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much again for leaning in with the Office of Cannabis and the Oversight Committee. The dedication and hard work of this Oversight Committee has been incredible, and I really appreciate it. It's an important platform for all of us. As many of you are aware, and I know that Madam Chair referenced it, that there was around the time of the uprisings and the protests, a rash of burglaries on our community. And I have to say, I do appreciate that the police department has agreed to come to the meeting today to provide us with an update, along with some other things that came out of a town hall meeting that we held with the community. So we're going to dive right into the presentation. Jeremy, if you wouldn't mind starting the first slide. Thank you so much. So this is just to give everyone, especially those who are joining us, joining this meeting today as attendees, there was an emergency meeting that happened before our town hall with impacted operators who came together to talk about what was going on. At this time, there was not a lot of information. We didn't really know that what was actually happening was a string of burglaries statewide, and that cannabis alongside our drugstores, CVS, Walgreens, were being targeted during the protest. People think that because our police resources were deployed elsewhere, that this could be an opportunity to attack those essential businesses that were up and running, and cannabis ended up being one of those businesses. And so as we started to sort of peel back what was happening and getting a better sense, I want to thank our city partners who came forward to meet during an emergency town meeting. Like I mentioned before that, the businesses actually came together first to talk about what was happening, how they were being impacted in preparation for that meeting. Next slide, please. So the town hall meeting actually happened, I believe it was a Tuesday, June 9th. I believe we're actually it was the only of its kind to happen as a result of the rash of burglaries statewide. I know this because the state actually reached out to me to talk about San Francisco's approach and best practices around what was happening. Representatives from our mayor's office, district attorney, DA Boudin attended, as well as the police department, Assistant Chief Michael Redman, as well as Deputy Chief David Lazar. And our planning director, excuse me, not the director, but I believe it was Michael Christensen, and I'm forgetting the other individual's name. It'll come to me in just a minute. And members of Supervisor Mandelman's office. I believe Tom Temprano was present for this meeting, which was really, really important for the community. And we appreciated that the city would lean in during a really crazy time for all of us. Next slide, please. So what came from this meeting is really important. And one of the things was being able to track those impacted officers, operations and operators, and get a sense of what was actually happening and getting a better sense of the full picture. We were able to set up a communication pipeline between SFPD and the community. Many of you have reached out directly to our SFPD officers. They are here today. They're on this call, which I greatly appreciate, and they're going to provide us with additional updates on where our cases are and how they're making it through the system. We are able to kind of pull away best practices. We've been in touch with many of the impacted operators and have been able to get information on how best to move forward in the event something like this were to happen again. And we continue to prepare our community in the event we get word that protests or other events that could potentially take police resources away from our community occur, so that we can be best prepared. In addition, another thing that came from this, which I think is incredible, is an opportunity to develop a relationship with our police department. We will be having regular meetings with the police department, and I'm going to allow them to go into more details about what that means and what that entails. I'm happy to answer questions about that. Please save the date. The first meeting will be August 18th. I believe it's at 1:30, but there's a slide that has the information, so I will rely on that. This is going to be an important time. It reminds me of when I was a neighborhood prosecutor, and I worked very closely with the entertainment community. And at that time, the nightclubs and other venues were experiencing some challenges, and decided that it would make a lot of sense to have regular meetings with the police department. It seemed like kind of an odd, unlikely relationship, but actually has turned and proven to be quite beneficial for both, and has really allowed the police department as well as the entertainment community to have open lines of communication, so that both can be supported during times of, well, in our case, unrest, but we'll see what ends up happening. But open lines of communication are always so much more important, and certainly help as we move forward and try to navigate some, just new and in some cases challenging times for our operators. So with that, if we could have the next slide, I believe. Okay, and these are the things we've talked about. Many of you have worked with Ray Law from our office for tracking your cases, as well as with the police department. And SFPD has also followed up with many of you individually moving forward. And if we can have the next slide. Here are some takeaways. I mentioned the meetings moving forward. We're hoping to get best practices out of this, but also if you are interested in continuing the conversation that was brought up during the town hall meeting regarding roll down doors, please reach out to Johnny Delaplane. His information is there. He knows that we are posting this with the Retailers Alliance. He is working with our supervisors to change the law around the planning code. And again, I'd like to reiterate that the Office of Cannabis is a regulatory office. We do not make laws. I know that in some cases we love our laws, in some cases we don't. And we understand that there can be challenges, and that together we can work with you, support you. What we like to do is be able to create just some organization around moving changes and continuing to refine our laws together. So we're here as a support. We want to continue to support our community and lean in with our community. But if you want to work to change these laws, work closely with your supervisors, reach out to Johnny Delaplane around with respect to the roll down doors. I know he's also doing a lot of work around tax law. If you're interested in that, also reach out to him. And other things around 3.0, there's going to be some updates about that too moving forward. So don't worry, that's, although it's had to be tabled in light of COVID, as we start to move through some other things, including the grants. We want to get that sorted, and so that people can have access to the money that they so badly need. We'll get that done, and then we can revisit our conversations around 3.0. But just wanted to reiterate that as well. And then the next slide, we're going to invite the SFPD to come on and start talking about, give us an update, essentially, on the cases since our last meeting. And again, greatly appreciate them leaning in, greatly appreciate the support of our Deputy Chief, David Lazar, as well as our Assistant Chief, Michael Redman, who have leaned into cannabis, and I continue to appreciate their support, as well as Captain Waring on the phone and Lieutenant Ryan. Thank you so much.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
I can hear you, yes, thank you.
Okay. Hi, this is Captain Waring with the San Francisco Police Department. I am the commanding officer for the General Crimes Unit, and the burglary unit falls under my command, as well as narcotics and the traffic investigations team. So I was asked pretty much to try to give a bridge between the conversations that you had on June 9th and in preparation for the next meeting that will be coming up on the 18th, which I believe that will be chaired by DC McGeckran and DC Lazar, that will have more details and more information in regards to the things that we're talking about today and accumulation of everything that you've been talking about, just to keep the conversation going between SFPD and the partners of the Cannabis Committee. Just giving an overview, because I was asked to try to provide in terms of a snippet between what happened around once the demonstration started. We had protests in the city as a result of the incident that happened in Minneapolis, and those protests started off peacefully, and they went into chaos and looting and vandalism and different things that happened. So here you're looking at a snapshot of about 38 cases that we had between the period of May 30th and June the 4th. And in that time, we had a couple of incidents that happened, multiple incidents that happened at same locations on the, in close proximity with the dates and whatnot. And so we pretty much just try to track everything that we're doing, but I just wanted to kind of back up for a minute, and I was asked to kind of make sure we give an overview in terms of once we have an incident to occur, like a burglary to occur with the partners, when they call it in, when the officers are coming out to take a report, what's usually helpful for us is cooperation from the business owners. So I know we had a couple of incidents where we did not have full cooperation, which resulted in some of the owners not feeling that they could trust the police in that situation. And so they end up calling back to the Office of Cannabis, and then we were able to work it out through the partnership between our office and the district station, and being able to send officers back out, just primarily framing for the owners that the police are here to take a report for you being victimized as a result of this crime that occurred to your business. So the things that are helpful for us when the officers are coming out, if they have information, photos or serial numbers or anything in regards to the cases and whatnot, that the items and stuff that have been burgled from their business, those things are all helpful because we document all those things in an incident report. And then from there, those incident reports are forwarded to our burglary unit. And then once it goes to our burglary unit, Lieutenant Ryan and team, they review these incident reports, and basically they assign them to investigators that then will follow up with the business owners to kind of, find out if we have witnesses, go out to check if there's video or any other evidence that we're needing to collect in order to make a case. And so once that happens, we try to maintain those relationships and keep the business owners apprised of where we are with the progress of their case. If arrests are made or anything along those lines, we try to keep them apprised of where we are and what the status of the case is. But what you're looking at here on the slide is primarily just showing you 38 cases that happened during the period of the looting spree that happened during the protest from May 30th, like I said, to June 4th. You have about 38 cases that are under investigation, 37 of these incidents where we were able to pull video and recover video, which is helpful evidence to the investigators, because from there we can find other leads, or if we have similar suspects in other cases, then it's a possibility that we may have a linkage there and can tie that case into another case as well. We also had several search warrants that were written and served. The team made about 18 arrests, and we recovered 2 firearms during that time for those cases that we're talking about. Just echoing Marissa's point in terms of building the partnerships, I know as we're moving forward and talking about the meeting that they want to have for the 18th, pretty much we were asked to kind of defer the questions. If questions are wanting to be asked today, to table those questions to have it, because our team, our deputy chiefs are going to come out and give you a full presentation and pretty much talk to you about the vision of what the department has in regards to how SFPD will be working with the Office of Cannabis. And right now I know DC McGeckran, who's the field operations deputy chief, he does want to foster relationships between the cannabis industry business owners and the district captains. So we have that as an added asset in the course and process of us working with the community, as well as burglary still being able to go out and handle these cases and hopefully make some solid arrests that we can present to the DA's office for prosecution. And so, as I said, the meeting that's coming up on the 18th, this will be not next week, in 2 weeks on Tuesday. It'll be a virtual meeting, and DC McGeckran and DC Lazar will be the two that will be chairing that meeting. And so we're welcoming you to bring your questions or whatever you have in regards to anything that we've presented today, as well as the things that you talked about on the 9th, and they will be there to pretty much frame everything and answer questions as needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Captain Waring, and we appreciate you as well leaning in on this. It means a lot to the community that top brass from SFPD is willing to not only lean in, but appreciate the important relationship between the cannabis industry and SFPD. So thank you for that. We look forward to the meeting on the 18th and to hear a fuller picture of everything and kind of where we are. And as far as the community is concerned, as you start to think about that meeting and what this means to you and how you'd like to shape this meeting, it's really up to the community. How often do you feel you'd like to meet with SFPD? What sort of information you'd like to receive from the police department? What you'd like best practices to look like? This is a time for us to start to do that. So I think as far as takeaways from our fireside chat, or excuse me, our virtual emergency community town hall. This is an incredible development, and I do appreciate it. And thank you for taking the time to do that, to be here today. So as you know, with the next slide, if you could put that back up, thank you. Most everyone should have this information. These are the individuals, if in fact you were an impacted operator, or if something has happened in the future, or since then or in the future. It's good to have these names. Sergeant Scott Hom, who's I believe on this call as well, he's the lead investigator for the burglary unit. Make sure you have his information, as well as Officer Michael Fang, who retrieved video from you. Make sure you have their information. Of course, you can always reach out to Ray Law from our office, who coordinates with both officers regularly. So thank you very much, and that concludes this portion of the agenda.
Could we take a brief look at the slide that showed the number of arrests and those statistics that had happened so far?
I think that was it. This one?
Yes.
Okay.
That's good work. Appreciate
and
it.
you can also, we can provide these to you at a different point. You can always have access to these slides.
Great.
I have a quick question. Does SFPD come out and take reports when there was a breach of the actual property, or any kind of vandalism or crime to or burglary attempt to the property?
Yes, if the call is called in for a call for service, officers from the district station do respond out. They'll make a police report for you, take photos of whatever damage that's sustained. We'll ask you for the value and whatnot, if other items or anything like that. If something's defaced, we'll come out. They'll make a police report for you. And those incidents are actually, for the vandalisms, a lot of those are handled by the station investigation team.
Right, because my personal experience has been vastly different with that. Multiple burglary attempts, we were never even able to file a police report, which probably explains why some of the cases why I wasn't notified to join the town hall meeting, even though my place had been breached as well. And I think as an equity applicant, as an equity owner, a minority, when you you call, it just seems like you get a bit of a different treatment. So I actually had to call 3 or 4 times. Nobody came out, and it took me calling my friend Kim to put some pressure on the station to just get a call to file a police report. So
okay, I'm just going to kind of cut you off there for a minute, just to make sure you understand how our process works. So how our process works, we have a priority system in terms of when calls are coming in for service. So for example, if you're calling in a vandalism or something of a defacing to a property, typically that would be a lower priority as opposed to somebody calling in where somebody's been stabbed or shot or somebody's being robbed. And so the resources have to be deployed to whatever the urgency is or the immediate need is. So then as those calls for service are cleared and handled, then the units, when they go back in service, they go to these other calls that are waiting on the board that still require police response.
Okay, 1 second, Ali. Just as a reminder, our position on the committee as of right now is to address like overall cannabis community issues, and that there are opportunities for you to address them directly, because there will be the follow-up meeting on August 18th.
Absolutely, and this is, I'm using this as an example because it's the example I have, but it's just also important to paint a picture that's accurate and not sit here and look at a presentation that has some accuracy to it, but there are some things that are wildly different from my experience and others in the industry. So that needs to be.
I do agree with you. I was kind of shocked to see that something that was not addressed on this one, in this presentation, was that the people that did get police response but were not waited for or anything in their establishments ended up getting burglarized even after the police had showed up. So I'm kind of disappointed that this presentation or that the SFPD did not follow up in it, talk about their procedure in that case, because it was something that was brought up during the town hall meeting and said that there was going to be some follow up around it, but it didn't happen. So
if I could jump in just quickly. So the August 18th meeting is going to be the place to kind of go through everything and give an update and talk about best practices and kind of things that have occurred. We're going to hear from impacted operators that want to share their experiences as well. This was specifically to give an update on where they were with actual cases, the investigations, how many arrests were made, kind of more numbers. So the individual sort of stories we'll have, a dedicated meeting, and then can also talk to how many times we would like to meet again to follow up moving forward and just how we'd like to shape those meetings. But certainly wanting to make sure that the police department does hear from impacted officers so that they can better understand perhaps where they failed and where they are doing a good job, so that we can make sure that moving forward, everybody's needs are met, if that makes sense. So today was really, we carved out a small period of time because we knew that we wanted to focus on grants and some other things. That today was just about coming in, providing updates, letting us know where the cases are, that there is actual movement, and kind of what were the takeaways from the town hall.
Okay.
And Ollie, you should have been invited to the town hall because I invited everyone to the town hall.
Okay, so
I'll get the next one. Don't worry.
Okay.
I invited you.
Are there any other direct questions from? Yes, Jessica, I see your hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to know the town hall that's going to, or this cannabis industry meeting with SFPD that's happening on August 18th. Will that be recorded? And if so, how do we get that recording?
It's going to be the WebEx or Teams, similar. So it'll be like this. I suppose we can put it on our website, or we can speak to the oversight committee about how the best kind of place to house the recording. But if you wanted access, you could certainly request it. And then one thing to also keep in mind, Brown Act, issues as far as those members of the oversight committee attending this meeting. Make sure that you identify no more than 4, that there isn't a situation there. So work closely with David, and then maybe on a rotation, you can attend, but you can certainly watch the video, of course.
Yeah, that's basically why I asked. I mean, I can't make that actual one, but I know just to be aware of the Brown Act that if it's in a recording, then at least we have access to see it as a follow-up to what's happening right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll record it.
Okay. So I have a feeling that there's going to be quite a bit of public comment for this agenda item. So that being the case, I was going to open the floor up to public comment so that hopefully we can get to our item number 5, which is really crucial, that we get to being able to figure out how to administer these grant dollars directly to our impacted communities. So for everyone else that's on the call, item number 5 specifically addressed around $4 million in grant money that is being directly distributed to impacted communities. Well, mostly the business owners that have had cannabis arrests, or have had family that had cannabis arrests, or grew up in the in SFA USD public school systems, or in like Bayview, Lakeview, like Alamany, like Sunnydale, all those things that qualify them to have a cannabis equity permit. We would like to get to that conversation hopefully on this call, but I do understand that there are some people that do have a lot of comment around this item. So just keep that in mind. Remember, you got 2 minutes and I'll cut you off. So word. All right. Opening up the floor to public comment.
Yes, Madam Chair. So right now, there are 2 individuals waiting to speak, and I'm going to unmute the first individual. Speaker, you're unmuted now, and you have.
Hi, my name is Peter, and I live in District. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay. Hi, my name is Peter, and I live in District 5. I'm concerned by the statements during the presentation that police essentially abandoned protecting businesses in order to go after protesters. The curfew was ostensibly to protect local businesses in the first place, and yet it came at the expense of protecting local businesses. No wonder some businesses felt that they couldn't rely on police to help. The solution to this isn't a comms pipeline for when police want to let businesses know when they're going to flake out and not respond to calls. It's a public safety body that doesn't abandon their duties in order to go after protesters. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, there's another individual on the line, and I'm going to unmute this individual. Hello, caller. Your 2 minutes begins now.
Hi. Hi, my name is Odyssey, and I live in District 9 in San Francisco. I'm also a former classroom educator at SFUSD, and I'm calling to demand the divestment of the cannabis business tax dollars away from the SFPD. I do think that my time in the classroom has me thinking about this further as well, because as a teacher of primarily children of color, specifically Black and Latinx students, I've seen firsthand how over-policing in communities of color leads to the overrepresentation of young Black and brown kids in juvenile centers and eventually in adult prisons. The answer here, especially in terms of public safety, the answer is not continued or over-policing. If anything, the protests have shown that in the last month, is that a continued and increased police presence is not contributing to public safety. And using tax dollars for the cannabis industry in connection with SFPD is inherently continuing a racist legacy based on, starting from the war on drugs in the 80s. And I just highly, as a constituent, as a former educator, as a citizen, as a person who cares about public health and safety, I demand that these tax dollars not be used for in conjunction with SFPD. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to remind people that are on this call, if you have public comment, please press *3 in order to put yourself in the queue. Ray, do we have any other people?
I do. I'm going to unmute the next speaker. Hello, caller. Your 2 minutes begins now.
I already went. Thank you.
Any other callers, Ray?
Yes, we do. Hello, caller. You are unmute and your now. Madam Chair, we have a hard time hearing this caller, so I'm going to skip this caller and then move on to the next one, if that's okay.
Okay. Yeah. If you had trouble, just call back and put yourself in the queue.
Hello, caller. Your 2 minutes starts now.
Hello, my name is Simona Manganelli, and I live in San Francisco. I'm calling to demand the divestment of our cannabis business tax dollars away from the SFPD. At a time when the city is calling to defund, disarm, and disband the SFPD, this includes tax revenue from cannabis businesses to the SFPD. The war on drugs began in the 80s as a racist way to lock up more Black and brown folks, and cannabis tax dollars going to the SFPD is just another way for police to cash in on the war on drugs. This weed to police pipeline needs to be dismantled today. The SFPD has proven that they will not protect the city's cannabis businesses. 22 of the 37 licensed cannabis businesses in the city were broken into since May 29th. The SFPD did nothing for these businesses. In fact, when the first break-in happened on Friday the 29th, the SFPD did not inform businesses so they could take action. Instead, break-in continues over the weekend. This proves that the money that is given to the SFPD from cannabis business taxes does very little for safety for those businesses. 2 weeks after these cannabis businesses were broken into across the West Coast, SFPD only identified one individual, proving that they are not actually providing safety to these cannabis businesses. After the past months of protests and public hearings, it is no longer possible to pretend that a silent majority of San Franciscans see policing and incarceration as solutions to our city's problems or want to see our city's funds spent on the SFPD rather than on reinvestment in education, social services, and community resources. We call on the San Francisco Office of Cannabis to completely divest money from the SFPD and reinvest this money into Black and brown communities in the city. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Madam Chair, we have move on to the next call.
Thank you.
Hello, caller. Your 2 minutes starts now.
Hi, my name is Lawrence Drinkard, and I live and work in District 9. I'm calling to demand the divestment of our cannabis business tax dollars away from the SFPD. At a time when the city is calling to defund, disarm, disband the SFPD, this includes tax revenue from cannabis business to the SFPD. The war on drugs began in the 80s as a racist way to lock up more black and brown folks, and cannabis tax dollars going to the SFPD is just another way for police to cash in on the war on drugs. This weed to police pipeline needs to be dismantled today. After the past months of protests and public hearings, it is no longer possible to pretend that the silent majority of San Franciscans see policing and incarceration as a solution to our city's problems, or want to see our city's funds spent on the SFPD rather than on reinvestment in education, social services, and community resources. We call the San Francisco Office of Cannabis to completely divest money from the SFPD and reinvest this money into Black and brown communities in the city. Thank you.
We are going to move on to the next speaker. Hello, caller. Starts now.
Hello, my name is Angela Ting. I am a San Francisco resident in District 2. And like the others on this call, I am demanding the divestment of our cannabis tax dollars away from the SFPD. As a former cannabis dispensary worker in a primarily Black and brown neighborhood in San Francisco, I have seen firsthand that the devastation that the drug war has on the most vulnerable communities in our city. And I can absolutely tell you for a fact that the police do not care about protecting cannabis businesses in the city, especially the ones in lower income neighborhoods. I think that the SFPD should be defunded and eventually abolished. And I think that our cannabis tax dollars would go to better use towards cannabis equity for Black and brown communities that have been disproportionately impacted by the drug war. I yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Madam Chair. We are going to move on to the next call. Hello, caller. Your 2 minutes starts now.
Hi, my name is Emily, and I live in San Francisco in District 9. I'm calling to say what the other callers have said too, especially the caller before, and I'm calling to demand the divestment of our cannabis business tax dollars away from SFPD. At a time when the city is calling to defund, disarm, and disband the SFPD, this includes tax revenue from cannabis businesses to the SFPD. The war on drugs began in the 80s as a racist way to lock up more Black and brown folks, and the cannabis tax dollars are going to the SFPD is just another way for the police to cash in on the war on drugs. This weed to police pipeline needs to be dismantled today. The SFPD has proven that they will not protect the city's cannabis businesses. 22 of the 37 licensed cannabis businesses in the city were broken into since May 29th. The SFPD did nothing for these businesses. In fact, when the break-ins happened on Friday the 29th, the SFPD did not even inform the businesses so they can take action. Instead, the break-ins continued through the weekend. This proof that the money is given to SFPD from cannabis business taxes does very little for safety for these businesses.
You guys see me?
2 weeks after the cannabis businesses were broken into across the West Coast, SFPD only identified one individual, proving that they are not actually providing safety to these cannabis businesses. After the past month of protests and public hearings, it is no longer possible to pretend that a silent majority of San Franciscans see policing and incarceration as solutions to our city's problems, or want to see our city's funds spent on the SFPD rather than reinvestment in education, social services, and community resources. We call the San Francisco Office of Cannabis to completely divest money from the SFPD and reinvest this money into Black and brown communities in the city. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Madam Chair, we're going to move on to the next call. Hello. Your 2 minutes starts now.
Hi, my name is Elena, and I live and work in San Francisco, District 11. I'm echoing everybody's call to voice and demand the divestment of our cannabis business tax dollars away from the San Francisco Police Department. We're calling to defund, disarm, and disband the SFPD. As an educator, especially someone who works in the county jails, I've had firsthand experience seeing communities of color, just a vast majority, come in and out of the jail system. The recidivism rate is outrageous, and I believe, we've tried and tried again with the Sheriff's Department. I know they're doing a great job there, but most of the money can be just completely divested to education, to mental health services, to community organizations, and really find solutions to our incarceration problem and funds being reinvested in our communities. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, caller. Madam Chair, we have two more individuals waiting in line, and I'm going to pull up the next call. Hello, caller. Your 2 minutes starts now.
Okay, everybody, I made it on, I guess. I don't mean to interrupt the meeting.
Hello, caller. Your 2 minutes starts now.
Oh.
Madam Chair, we have a hard time hearing. I think we can move on to the next item because there's no caller waiting right now.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for your public comment in regards to where you guys feel that cannabis tax dollars should go. Just to let you go, as an educational piece for the public, cannabis state, there are no city tax dollars that go directly to SFPD. The money does go into the general fund, and there are general fund tax dollars that does go to SFPD. Also, general fund dollars are the ones that settle out any lawsuits against SFPD. It doesn't come from their budget, it comes from the general fund. So those are relevant points for sure. It is the state tax dollars, 20% of the cannabis tax dollars at the state level go into law enforcement. So that's also an advocacy point that you guys can maybe look at approaching this. We hear you, and thank you guys for taking the time to participate.
And if I could add one more thing.
Yes.
Thank you very much for taking the time to share with us. As Director of the Office of Cannabis, just so you know, tax dollars from the cannabis industry don't even come to the Office of Cannabis. So it's kind of important to note, like, we are not the body that even would be able to redirect those monies. But just so you know, too, it doesn't go to fund even our office. There are no cannabis specific taxes at this time. But of course, this conversation needs to continue to be had around reform and the important parts and the important just aspects of the reform process and where money should go ultimately and in general. So thank you for your thought, for your words, for your comments, but just to understand just the way money makes its way through our process is very specific here in San Francisco. Thank you.
Right. So Marissa, just as clarification, would that be the mayor's office, and or is it the supervisor that can make those calls as far as like direction?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Budgets are typically a mayor's office area. I think, of course, certainly I would recommend starting the conversation with your supervisor so that you can have a better lay of the land and understand sort of how these things make their way through. Right now, again, I want to reiterate, there is not a cannabis specific tax. If you're interested in talking about taxes that are up and coming, like Prop D, reach out to Johnny Delaplane, as he's also roll down doors, and taxes is an area that the Retailers Alliance is interested in pursuing. So those are two things to note. Sales tax, again, as it for any business, goes into the general fund. The Office of Cannabis does not see cannabis-specific dollars that have been, I mean, dollars are dollars, you know, maybe a dollar has come our way, I'm not sure, but it doesn't get earmarked to us, which, you know, we can talk about that another day for as far as resources and stuff, but that's not for today. And I don't want to take too much time more because I do want to get the dollars that we do know about into the hands of those who desperately need them by way of grants.
Thank you. All right. So, okay. Closing public comment and all of that, we are going to move on to item number 5. I know that we had just gotten Sean on board with us, but there are 3 members, Ali, Jesse, and Shane, that will need to recuse themselves from this conversation as they have potential financial interest in being able to apply for these dollars for either their clients or for themselves. So now is the time to be able to hop off the call, and then we will text you, or we'll have Nikesh text you to hop back on.
I just got back on. I just got on.
I know, Sean. I know, Sean. I'm so sorry.
Oh God. Okay.
I know.
Sounds good.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, David. I know how to get on now. Thank you, David. And thank you, Nikesh, and thank you, Ray.
No problem, Sean. We'll be in contact. We'll send you a text as Nina said when we complete this item. So thanks for sticking with it.
Talk to you soon, Sean. Thanks for sticking with us.
Yeah.
Sean. All right.
Oh, Madam Chair, this is David. I just wanted to share that also, just for the record, that Sean did put in a vote to approve the meeting minutes. So we do have that recorded, but wanted that on this recording as well.
Thank you. Thanks for that. I know, tech issues.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So next up is that we are going to hear. This is exciting stuff because we've been waiting for this money for a long time. So the committee will now hear a presentation from the OOC in regards to grant items, grant-related items. So where are we at on this process, and how can we get the money to the people?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hi, everyone. My name is Nikesh Patel. I will be working with my colleague, Jeremy Schwartz, to give this presentation. And in the interest of time, we'll sort of move straight into it. We'll give you a quick roadmap of the direction that the presentation will go in. It'll cover 3 broad categories. The first is a grant update regarding the GoBiz grants. The second portion will be a conversation about the grant distribution process and grant distribution funds specifically to verified equity applicants, and then also to technical assistance providers. And the final portion of the presentation will be a revisitation of a conversation that the committee had during the last meeting, where they issued a set of recommendations regarding the best and most equitable ways to distribute equity grant dollars to verified equity applicants. So we will take those recommendations and show you the models that make most sense using those recommendations. And throughout this presentation, what we've also done is identified key questions that we will flag at each step of the presentation. They'll also be revisited at the very end for the committee to consider and weigh in on. Those are the key questions that we would love to have your input on so we can continue to move this process forward. So with that being said, Jeremy, if you could hit the next slide. And this works out great because Jeremy will be taking over the presentation at this point. So speak with everyone soon.
Thank you, Nikesh. Jeremy Schwartz here, Office of Cannabis. This is certainly an exciting conversation. So we'll zoom out for sort of general updates, and then we'll hone in on the 2 universes buckets for grants. So to start off, we have not yet received GoBiz grant funds. They have not made it to city coffers yet. We continue to communicate with our state partners to get a better sense of when those funds could be made available. Similarly, we've conducted a lot of due diligence, not only at the state level, but across the local level with other city partners that have experience with grant administration and looking at the various models to find the right one that's suitable for social equity applicants. So we've created open lines of communication at the state level, including points of contact. We've begun drafting the request for proposal, certainly based on some community feedback to date. And I'll delve into that process a little more in subsequent slides. In addition, we've begun to build out the system to facilitate grant dispersals when funds do become available. So, for example, a software platform for folks to register an application as well as a grant agreement. In addition, we're working with our digital services partners in the city to build out a grants portion available on our website to act as the single platform for folks to go for a lot of information about this grant process. So all to say, items are in motion. We will continue to communicate with the community, much like you see with our industry updates, to ensure that everyone has a shared understanding about not only when this process is up and running, but how folks can successfully navigate the process and secure funding to offset costs associated with their cannabis businesses. So I'll draw your attention to the last item, the buckets for grants. On one hand, there's a mechanism to disperse funds to social equity applicant businesses to pay for startup and ongoing costs. In contrast, there's this technical assistance bucket that will involve a request for proposal process in order to support equity operators or prospective social equity applicants looking to work in the industry to build out their skills and ultimately run a successful business. Being permitted is not the end of the journey. It's certainly the beginning. And after getting permitted, it's certainly wanting folks to be able to run long-term successful, viable businesses. So with regards to our first bucket, the mechanism that the city's identified for folks to secure funds is to register as a bidder and a supplier with the city. We continue to work with our city partners because this is a bit of a unique process to make sure it's as seamless and easy as possible to ensure that folks are encountering items that are out of scope with this type of grant program. In addition, completing an application where you identify your unique equity applicant ID number, making sure funds go to verified equity applicants, as well as a process to convey expenses, invoices, receipts to document the paper trail so folks are reimbursed appropriately. Some estimated timelines. So bear in mind, we're offering estimated timelines throughout this presentation. They are subject to change. There are some standard deviations, but we are pursuing aggressive timelines, understanding that the community is eager to reap the benefits of not only these funds, but technical assistance opportunities. So we endeavor to launch our website with regard to grants starting in August. It may not be a final product at that time, but it's certainly going to be a starting off point so folks can collect the information they need to go through this process. Based on the initial oversight recommendations from the last meeting, it appears that there will be tiers of equity applicants that may see additional benefits. So tier 1, that sole proprietor group, also outlining the 51% owners and above and the rest of the applicants. And I imagine we'll refine this at the end of the presentation and as the community and committee members discuss. So very generally speaking, the state's identified funds for startup and ongoing costs. What does that mean? Certainly, the effort taken to form your entity, the permitting fees associated with securing your cannabis business permit, as this group understands by now, is that the cannabis permitting process involves a whole panoply of city departments. It certainly starts with Office of Cannabis, ends with Office of Cannabis, but in between, you're navigating other city departments such as the Department of Building Inspection, the Planning Department, and there are fees associated with change of uses, pulling your building permits, items like that. which appear to be eligible uses, in addition to compliance measures that are reflected in our regulations on our website, mailing your notice to neighbors within 300 feet, surveillance requirements, items like that. And if folks aren't familiar with our regulations, certainly go to Office of Cannabis at sfgov.org and poke around our website and regulations. With regards to this second bucket, so on one hand, we talked about dispersing funds to social equity applicants. Here is this technical assistance bucket where we'll issue a request for proposal and review proposals for areas that will most help social equity applicants, whether workforce development, business development. So to start last Friday, we circulated a letter to our distribution channels to gauge the capacity availability of services to support social equity applicants, as well as soliciting general feedback from stakeholders. I encourage everyone watching here, from committee members to members of the public, you are not only free to write your feedback, but it is certainly encouraged, because this will help shape what that request for proposal may look like. Moreover, I talked about not only securing those proposals, but there will be a review of those proposals. How are they reviewed? It will be by an independent body, independent of the Office of Cannabis. The OOC will not score these proposals, but instead will look to secure panelists, a review panel, to look at these proposals, score them accordingly, to indicate who is eligible for funding and what level of funding. So with that being said, the city has identified the non-voting members of this oversight committee as great candidates to partake in this. It's certainly an exciting opportunity to work with a new program and getting the first of its kind grant program off the ground. So there are questions for the Oversight Committee that you'll see at the end of this presentation to talk about. I'm just planting the seed here that it's going to be an important component of this request for proposal process. Moreover, you see some likely requirements. So for folks that may have seen the omnibus of the Office of Economic Workforce Development, they routinely engage in an RFP, and we've learned some best practices from them about minimum qualifications businesses should have to ensure that there are competent TA providers supporting social equity applicants. As far as estimated timelines, you'll recall that the LOI is out to solicit letters of intent and feedback due in about 2 weeks or so. We hope to issue the request for proposal by the end of this month, early next month. There will be about a month timeline for folks to gather their application materials, submit their RFP, then about another month for the review committee to score these proposals, and projects beginning after that, depending on contracting requirements. But ideally, these folks are up. Ideally, most of these folks are up and running by the end of the year. The program areas, it's not on this slide, but will be later on, that have initially been identified is support with folks navigating the grant process, getting vendor, submitting an application and receipts, supporting folks through the permitting process, almost like a navigator, because it involves so many city departments, and to ensure that folks are pursuing the process as efficiently as possible. Moreover, workforce development. So not all social equity applicants seek to open a business. Some want employment opportunities and how best they can position themselves to work in the industry, workforce development, and certainly business development. Again, permitting is not the end of your journey, it's the beginning, and how best to develop your business. This next slide enumerates the questions for the Oversight Committee to talk about. We'll hold that off for now just to orient yourselves about the discussion, and we'll make available these set of questions again at the end of this presentation. And with that, I'll kick it back to Nikesh to go over some of the modeling.
Jeremy, thanks for providing the really sort of comprehensive review of the work that you and the OOC team in general has been doing to get the distribution process clear and off the ground. So thanks so much for that overview. I'm sure there'll be more questions. So we will revisit this topic at the end of the presentation. Like Joe mentioned, the set of questions that you just saw that we want the committee to weigh in on, they will be provided at the end as well. And I noticed that Director Rodriguez has her hand up. So Director Rodriguez?
Yeah, and I just want to add that the governor made it a priority that these dollars get into the hands of equity applicants. So that is a priority, and our process, hopefully, as far as the city is concerned, whatever is needed to get that those dollars to us will keep the oversight committee updated. Any delays are likely on our side in light of a number of things that we've discussed before, like COVID and other things. But getting our signed resolution to the state is our next step.
Thank you. And with that, we'll move into the last part of the presentation. Like I mentioned earlier, and like Madam Chair mentioned, there's a significant portion of dollars allocated for distribution of grant funds to verified equity applicants. And during the last meeting, the Oversight Committee issued 4 recommendations about the most equitable way to distribute these funds. What we're going to do during this next part of the presentation is walk through those recommendations, provide a brief recap of what they were, the amount that can be distributed, and then show you the most feasible way to implement those recommendations, and then address the 2 remaining questions that we have. The work that the Oversight Committee did at the last meeting was tremendous, gave us very sharp parameters of what we need to be looking at to implement these funds and to be able to create distribution processes that can get rolled out ASAP. So we're nearing the end with this process. There are 2 remaining questions that we'd like the Oversight Committee to address. They were incorporated into the memo that was sent out last night, but they'll also be revisited at the end of this conversation. So with that being said, Jeremy, could you move to the next slide? Thank you. So the amount that can be distributed as grant funds to verified equity applicants is $4,935,500, and this money must be spent down by the summer of 2020. We'll get a little bit more, we'll touch a little bit more on this timeline in a second, but that is the sort of overarching goal. During the last meeting, the Oversight Committee weighed in on the 4 recommendations for how these funds should be distributed equitably. We'll run through them quickly, and I'll provide an update on one that we've been able to get a little bit more clarity on. So the first recommendation that was issued was this notion that there should be groups that are prioritized, and particularly sole proprietors and single entity LLCs, and specifically within that group, those that have been permitted and those that are in build out because of the costs that are associated with being in those stages of the application process or being permitted. So with that being said, the first recommendation that was issued was that there should be a group 1, it should be prioritized, and it should include sole proprietors, single LLCs, and specifically those that have been permitted and those that are in build out. One of the clarifications we want to provide with this particular point is the Office of Cannabis is construing sole proprietors as including any individual that has 100% ownership of their business across all entity types, so not just LLCs, but also S Corps and other entities that we've seen. Moving on, the committee also recommended that there be a second tier, group 2, and the specific recommendation called for equity applicants with 51% ownership or greater, less than 100%, that fit into this group 2. But the conversation also reflected a willingness that this group as a whole include all other applicants as well, which would include sole proprietors and single LLC members who are in planning, who are still being processed through Part 1, as well as those that own 51% ownership of their businesses, as well as those that own 40% and are the operators and CEOs. The third recommendation that came from the meeting was this notion that there should be timelines incorporated into the length of time that applicants have to spend down the funds that have been distributed or allocated to them. Now we'll touch on this notion in a moment as we've worked through the process to better understand how feasible it is to incorporate all of these recommendations. This is one area where there are variables that are still up in the air that make it the type of recommendation that we'll have to keep revisiting, but we'll talk about that in a moment. And then the final recommendation that the committee issued was when it comes to allocating dollars to applicants, the decision was that those distributions should be made per applicant, not per business. And that's a key distinction because some applicants have multiple applications in the pipeline, meaning they have multiple businesses. So the distribution in that event would be to each business versus what the committee recommended, which is by applicant. So there is a certain amount that's allocated to an applicant and they can distribute it across their different business applications versus allocating a set amount for each business. So those were the 4 core recommendations. Jeremy, if you could move to the next slide. And this is an update on the 3rd recommendation about the redistribution model. So as we've engaged with the city and other partners to better understand how feasible it is to construct a redistribution model, we've identified certain factors that will keep this an ongoing conversation. One of those factors is that there is a likelihood or a possibility that there may be grant extensions. And that's something we're working hard to get a better sense of. But until we do, it may not make sense to implement a redistribution model because there may be more time, which would create a disincentive to spend that money down over a shorter period of time. The other items that we've noticed or other factors are that there are administrative challenges and timing challenges given the short amount of time we have to actually spend that money down. So this is going to be an ongoing conversation. We will keep the Oversight Committee abreast of any developments that happen on this front. But as of now, the 3 other recommendations are the ones that are forming the models that we'll talk about in a moment. And we're happy to entertain any questions at the end of this presentation regarding this particular item. One of the things that is important to note that depending on how these 2 factors, the likelihood of extensions being granted and the administrative challenges that we're facing, if those 2 factors stand and we are unable to implement a redistribution model, then any of the funds that are unspent between now and when we have to spend them down will be returned to the state. Jeremy, next slide, please. All right, and then one last item that the Oversight Committee also addressed during the last meeting was a definition of what it means to prioritize. So prioritization was defined as whoever receives prioritization, in this case, Group 1, gets a greater share of the overall distributions and is reimbursed sooner than other applicants. So with that being said, those 4 recommendations and this definition of what it means to prioritize, we can now move on to the models. These are the most feasible models that can be built based on these recommendations. There's some questions that we'd like you to address regarding these models in a moment, but let's run through the models pretty quickly. So this model shows that if you break the overall pot of applicants into 2 groups, Group 1, Group 2, as the Oversight Committee recommended, then there are roughly 5% of the overall number of applicants that would be eligible to receive grant funding that would be prioritized. And that would include those that are permitted and those that are in build out. The rest would fall into Group 2. Jeremy, could you please click the next slide? Great. So by this distribution, if we allocated $100,000 per applicant, which is the limit that was discussed during the last meeting, to the 5 individuals that fall within Group 1, then that would mean a total of $500,000 allocated to that particular group, which represents approximately 10% of the overall funds. Now, there are a lot of numbers here. I'm happy to go through this again, but just give a quick overview. Group 1 applicants, which in this instance includes sole proprietors and single entity LLCs that have either been permitted or are in build out, would each receive $100,000 and would have to spend that money down by early 2021. Now, keep in mind that these numbers reflect this point in time. So as of today, the size of these groups is what we're talking about right now. One of the questions that we'll pose to the committee is when they'd like to set the date to determine the particular size of these groups. Jeremy, can you hit the next slide? Thanks. So with Group 1 being that 5%, the remaining applicants, approximately 99, would receive the remaining portion of what would be left of that approximately 4.9 million. That comes out to $4,430,500 would be available to split amongst the remaining 99 applicants. That means that each applicant in Group 2 would receive approximately $45,000 and have between the time that it's issued to early 2021 to spend that money down. Jeremy, would you mind hitting the next slide? This is a second model that we're going to focus on. So the first model was set against Group 1, including 2 particular groups of sole proprietors, those that have been permitted and those that are in build out. This second model adds another group within that group 1, and that's those sole proprietors and those single entity LLCs who have also been referred to planning. So the second model increases that size by adding one more group or adding one more subgroup within group 1. And we just want to walk you through to show you how that affects the group 2 and how it affects the distribution to group 1. So Jeremy, if you could click the next slide. So with the added subgroup, so now group 1 would include those who have been referred to planning, those that are in build out, and those that have been permitted within the sole proprietor and single entity groups. They would each receive $100,000 to spend down by the summer of 2021. That would mean that approximately 1 million of the 4.9 million would be allocated to this particular group, which would represent about 20% of the overall amount that can be distributed. In raw numbers, that means about 10 applicants. So 10 applicants would receive $100,000 each to spend between the time it's distributed to early summer of 2020. If that happens, then I'm sure the question all of you have is how does that affect group 2? And what we realized, Jeremy, if you could click the next slide, is that it reduces the amount to all other applicants, but not by as much as we might have imagined. It's a reduction of about $4,000. When that first group only includes those who have been permitted and those who are in build out, the average that each applicant receives is $45,000. When it's expanded to include those who have also been referred to planning, it drops to about $41,000 per applicant. Again, same notion that each applicant in this group would have until the summer of 2021 to spend this amount down. Jeremy, if you could click the next slide. All right, and at this point, I'm going to turn over this portion of the presentation to Eugene Hilsman, who will frame the 2 sets of questions, so 4 questions and some for the committee to discuss. At the conclusion of this presentation, he'll also open himself up, as will the rest of us and Director Rodriguez, for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thanks, Nikesh. So Jeremy and Nikesh have flagged for you earlier in the presentation, but there are a number of questions that we would like the Oversight Committee to respond to. So we'd also like to hear about your priorities for technical assistance and identification of non-voting members for the review panel that Jeremy discussed. During the last Oversight Committee meeting, we had the opportunity to discuss priorities for distributing funds to equity applicants. We have a couple additional follow-up questions, which I will highlight now. The first is this question around the committee recommending that sole proprietors and single entity LLCs who have been permitted and are now in the build-out phase are eligible for up to $100,000 in grant funding. The specific question is, would you like us to include sole proprietors and single entity LLCs in the planning stage? So for example, those are applicant entities that have not yet transitioned to the build-out stage to receive the same amount. Specifically, these are people who've been referred to planning but have not received land use entitlement. So they made it through part 1 of the application process, but haven't received land use entitlement and transitioned into the build out category in the Office of Cannabis. Should they be eligible for $100,000 as well? So that's the first question. The second question is this universe of eligible applicants. So the tiers must be determined at a fixed point in time. This is a fluid process. Businesses are moving through the permitting process, but at some point, we're going to have to essentially take a snapshot for the purposes of distributing grants. The question to the Oversight Committee is, would you like that date to be today or the date when the OOC begins to actually distribute grant funds, right? So should we kind of lock the door today, or should we provide some additional flexibility for folks to move through the process? Next slide. Yep. So here we have some additional questions about the provision of technical assistance. Here you see in the bulleted list a number of potential program areas, right? Grant process support, permit process support, workforce development, and business development. What we'd like to hear from the Oversight Committee is what are the priorities that are listed, of the items that are listed here? And are there additional programmatic areas that you would suggest for things that we haven't included? So we'd just like to get a sense from you, what are the kind of priorities that you see on the screen? If we're missing something, this is the opportunity for you to share it with us. And then finally, as my colleague Jeremy mentioned, we're looking for some additional support in reviewing these technical assistance kind of contracts and requests for proposals. And we would like the identification of non-voting members to form the independent review committee for TA contracts. So this will not be done by the Office of Cannabis. We're looking for an independent panel to do that review. And will we be able to identify today 4 non-voting members to actually form that review committee from members of the Oversight Committee? So we anticipate that you'll have some additional questions. It's also important to note that in addition to the Oversight Committee feedback, we've created mechanisms to hear directly from community stakeholders. For example, we developed a letter of intent process, which was designed essentially to gather feedback and hear directly from potential applicants. These recommendations from the Oversight Committee will be considered for the final RFP, but ultimately several other factors will play an important role in constructing it, including feasibility, capacity, state and local restrictions. But we'd really like to take this opportunity to hear from you, and collectively we'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Hey guys, Aaron Flynn here, seat 9. In regards to the moment in time that we need to decide, when to lock up the amount of applicants that receive grants, it's either today or when the Office of Cannabis starts distributing funds. And we may have seen it earlier today, but could you give us a general sense of when you think the Office of Cannabis might be distributing those funds?
We're hoping at least by the end of the summer. We don't, we want to be full. There could be a number of things right now. We're in the process of getting our signed resolution to the state, as I mentioned. So it's just a matter of like getting everything up and running. So end of summer, early fall. So just kind of thinking what the universe will look like at that point.
And that's a couple, that you're talking about next
year. So
a year from now.
No, this year, now.
Right, so yeah. a month or two.
Yeah, oh God.
Got it. And
Jeremy, I just want to point, Jeremy, does that sound right to you?
Certainly to start dispersing funds, so just bearing in mind that there's been a delineation of groups, so those in that second group would receive funds later. But I think the thrust of your question is when the process would start, Aaron, and to that ideally within the next couple months. And correct me if I'm misunderstanding your question.
No, that's correct. And really what I'm trying to get a grasp for is, if we choose today, obviously then whoever is in these positions, that's it, as far as who's going to receive the funds. If we choose when the Office of Cannabis starts distributing the funds, if it's 2 months from now, the question would be roughly how many more applicants do you think will have moved into these slots? And I know I'm asking you kind of speculative questions, but
yeah.
You see where I'm going, right? How many,
right.
you're gonna see 5 more people in that, that tier?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. It is a bit of a difficult question to answer, only because we've seen some delays and processes have to be put offline at different aspects of the permitting process, as you're aware of. So how many will get through? It's hard to say. Maybe a couple, maybe 4 or 5, or just kind of this idea largely that we're just going to say everybody in this group should be included. Which changes the overall amount for everyone else, naturally, but we just kind of have to think about those things.
And certainly to expand on that is applications have only been trickling in, maybe 1 a week or so, sometimes not even, but the volume of applications coming through our door has definitely been diminished in the social equity tier.
Thank you. So we
can you guys hear me? I'm having some issues. Okay, all right.
I think Sarah has her hand up.
Okay.
I do. When you're ready
Sarah,
for me.
Thank you, Sarah. Go ahead.
So the question I had, just to pick on what Aaron was saying, is I'm also wondering how many people have been disadvantaged this health crisis that we're going through that would be in the pipeline now if we hadn't been dealing with COVID for months. So I'm wondering if that's a factor we should take into consideration as well when we're looking at the date.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. Yeah, do you guys have an answer for that, you guys?
It's difficult to know how many applications would be in our system without them being in our system. What I can say for helpful context is certainly that historically storefront retail has been our most popular activity. But as folks have sort of established their space, their buffers, it's reduced the amount of opportunities in the most highly desirable activity. So on one hand, your point stands, there might be a universe without the pandemic that there may have been more interest, but ultimately the city's footprint is rigid, and the most sought after activity, regardless of the pandemic, didn't offer a lot of space for folks to pursue retail. And anyone can look at the storefront retail map for illustrative example.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Okay. So another thing that was touched on the last meeting was that we asked how many sole proprietors existed as a whole, like as far as like all like that had already submitted applications, and I think you guys had said 10 or 11. So my operating, is that still correct, or is there more people in the queue that that are not yet through planning that are sole proprietors?
And I can sort of take a stab at this, and Jeremy, please refine this. But my understanding by breakdown of sole proprietors at different stages of the application process is the following. Those that have been permitted, believe it's either 2 or 3. Those that are in build out, that's either 2 or 3. Those who are referred to planning, it's 5. And those that are currently in part 1 of the OOC's process, it's approximately 4 to 5. There's a little bit of, it depends on how you calculate it, but in some, the universe of sole proprietor single entity LLCs, in other words, applicants that have 100% ownership of their businesses, is approximately 16 across the different stages.
16. Okay, and then still, okay, so for the 4 or 5 that are in the beginning stage, they're probably not going to be able to see processing through for at least 18 months. Is that correct? Like, since they're in the very beginning, how long do you think it'll take them to get to planning or to, you know, stage 2?
Gosh, that's a hard question. Yeah, Jeremy, do you want to?
Yeah, so there, without it right in front of me, unfortunately, if folks are endeavoring to move through the process, it could take within a couple months or so. Candidly, I understand that there are folks that are having issues with their location, and maybe their specific application is no longer viable, but they're biding time as they look for alternatives, and maybe the 90-day shot clock isn't up. So although there's that roughly 5 or so number, maybe only a couple would get across the finish line, but it depends on many factors, many external factors out of our control. And what we gather anecdotally from these folks is that there's also issues with landlords, for instance, that create a situation where they have to rethink their strategy moving forward. So it's not an elegant answer. I understand that. And I think maybe in the best world, with respect to someone moving through the process, maybe only a couple, but it's certainly fluid.
Gotcha. I'm just trying to see, like how much foresight that we need to have, or how much time that we need to consider. Because if they were like well on their way, yeah, we would just consider other timelines. However, knowing how the process goes and knowing that it's kind of like a little bit up in the air, I don't want to stop individuals that are already, 1, through the process, and 2, like almost there, from being able to get their distributions. And so walking away from the meeting, I thought that there was like $1 million essentially. Like the second graph or like the second model that you showed was the one that I thought that we had decided on at the end of last meeting. But that was just my understanding. That one, that's the one.
And Nina, if that is the one that the committee wants to land on, then this model would include the following 3 subcategories within Group 1. Sole proprietors and single entity LLCs who have been permitted, those who are in build out, and those who have been referred to planning.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Another thing is for individuals that do have other things to say and are raising their hands, my internet is kind of going in and out, so your photos, I mean, like your pictures are going in and out. So if you do have to speak up, if you like have something to say. I know I saw Aaron's hand go before it went out. So go for it, Aaron.
Yeah, just to surmise kind of the thought process and the question I was asking earlier, if we go with option 2, the slide that's up here, and we decide to cut the process off today, then it basically stands like this. If we decide to wait until OOC starts distributing funds, we could see a handful, maybe 3 to 5 more join Group 1 at most. And from what we saw in the map that was presented in this presentation, a few more people joining Group 1 actually does not affect the dollar amount of Group 2 in a super significant way. It actually only affects that dollar amount in a relatively minor way proportional to those people getting there. So that's just what I was trying to wrap my head around, and it's leading me to incline towards maybe leaving the process open a little bit longer, because it's not like there's going to be this deluge of folks into Group 1, nor is it going to affect Group 2 in a significant capacity.
Anybody else have thoughts on what was presented before we open it up to public comment, so that we can have more information to discuss what we decide? Or should I open it up? You guys are okay with me opening up public comment at this point so that we have some more information to work with? Cool. All right. So I see your thumbs up, Teresa. Thank you. I got some head nods from Jessica. Cool. All right. So let's open up public comment. Remember, it is #3 to put yourself in the queue. If we can just get the number up for people to access again, just in case. That'd be great. If not, I can read it off. I can also read it off. It's fine. So a reminder.
Madam Chair, maybe this might be helpful. Ray, if you could pass the ball back to David. David, if you could then display the number, that would be great, just so people have it and can visually see it.
Yeah, because we can go back to the presentation during our conversation, but I just want to make sure that people aren't confused about how to get onto public comment.
All right, just 1 second. I think Ray will pass the ball back. There, yeah. David has it.
That is correct.
There it goes.
And Madam Chair, if I may, just a reminder to the public that we wanted to target this time for comment specifically on agenda item 5, and that we will also have general comment at the end. So if folks do have comments that do not pertain to this topic, there is an additional opportunity to share.
All right.
And are you all able to see the number up on the screen?
Yes, we are.
Okay, great.
Mm-hmm. All right. How are we looking in the queue?
Madam Chair, so far there's one individual waiting in line. I'm going to unmute him. However, before he start speaking, I would like to clarify with him because I also see a written comment submitted in the chat box. It's from the same individual, so I'm going to do that now. Hi, you are just unmuted. However, I see you also submit a written comment in the chat box. So feel free to start your public comment now, but just note that I will not read your comment off from the chat box after you speak. Your 2 minutes starts.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, well, I just wanted to say I'm a CEO, 40% owner, equity cannabis applicant, and recently I've been informed by DBI that I have over $50,000 in upcoming neighborhood impact fees from my space on Folsom in District 6 in order to achieve our job card. The number is not including the almost $15,000 in other fees that I've already paid at DBI and planning, nor does it include the upcoming state applicant fees. It also doesn't include the rent burden of maintaining a viable location through this lengthy process. While it was not unexpected, the size that this fee is, the slowness of app review of equity permitting applications through the DBI process, which has averaged about 6 to 7 weeks through each of the almost 10 separate city departments, have heavily reduced our capacity to shoulder these high fees, representing a huge unintended hard money deposit. My request is that verified equity applicants who are 40% CEO and are being confronted with these DBI planning neighborhood impact fees in the build-out phase should also be allowed immediate access to the grants as part of the Tier 1 group. I also want to point out that Cyril Yu at DBI, who was supposed to shepherd equity applicants, has gone ghost over the past 4 months. And I have nobody over there to help me at all.
It's a problem.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for your comment.
Yep. Thank you.
Madam Chair, let's move on to the next speaker. Hello, caller. Your 2 minutes starts now.
Hey, sorry. This is Ed Brown, Original Equity Group, also equity partner on retail. Just wanted to make a few comments. One small thing I saw was that there was some wording about that you guys potentially would send money back to the state. In no shape or form can we send any money back to the state. People like myself and a lot of other people on this call have worked countless hours to get this state equity dollars. Senator Bradford and a bunch of other legislators have worked hard to make sure we get this. So whatever we got to do, whether if we have to change something later in 2021, we cannot give any of this money back. Other comment I want to say thank you guys. I know it's a heavy lift to put this process and everything together. I would like to remind everyone on this call that we are in a pandemic and equity applicants are at a disadvantage, as you heard the gentleman just say. So we do need to make sure we're working on a framework that lets us move forward without having like a full package. 10 more seconds. You guys are thinking about doing a build out for the grant portal. I would like to see you guys do a sliding scale where you kind of complete some milestones so that people can start the process getting forward. And then for you guys to work with IT or the city or whatever one to complete the portal. So if we can just kind of have where we're helping those who are already face funds and get through, at the same time building the ecosystem of a grant and how to distribute that. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have one written comment submitted to the chat box. I'm going to read it out now. So this comment is from 7G, and the comment is, what is the process for an equity applicant in terms of application to approval during COVID? That concludes public comment.
Okay, we don't have any more public comment on this piece. Was there, Helen, can we pass the presentation back to the Office of Cannabis so that we can see the slides again? Right. Okay, technical assistance. Yeah, that's what I wanted to kind of cover too. Is that the grant funds for technical assistance providers. Because there's kind of two parts of this conversation that are happening, right? It's like, what are the parameters for the technical assistance providers, as well as like what are the tiers and the priority? Is that correct? Two questions that we're trying to figure out.
Chair, we're pulling up the slide, but one moment. The two questions are of the program areas for the technical assistance. So of the technical assistance programmatic areas, of those 4 areas, which should be prioritized? And if there are any other areas that you would suggest incorporating. And then the second question was with respect to the non-voting members of the Cannabis Oversight Committee, which members should be moved to, or at least recommended for the independent review committee? Those are the two questions.
Got it. Because I'm a little concerned because I know that we were talking about the technical assistance, but we didn't, and like these are things that have come out in other public comments, but I haven't heard anything from our technical assistance providers on this call in regards to this. I don't know if they're not on the call or if they just didn't make it to the queue. But yeah, okay. These are things that we have to consider, like moving forward. And I don't want to close the public comment process without having some input from them. And I guess that's what we might have to do. Can you give me some idea around this, Nikesh, of how to proceed as far as like strategically?
So if I understand the question correctly, it's that of the calls that came in during public comment, there weren't any that specifically addressed the the questions before the committee regarding the technical assistance grant funds.
Yeah.
I think, and this sort of echoes one of the previous callers, that procedurally, we leave the window open and then we close it when there are no other public commenters. So it looks like we've reached that point. I think from a strategic standpoint, given the time constraints around making these decisions and keeping this process moving, because there is a shot clock in terms of when this money has to be spent down by, it seems to me that the best thing to do at this point is to move along in the conversation, given that there's about less than an hour until we reach the end of this meeting. And these two questions, and then the other two questions, it is imperative that we get the Oversight Committee's feedback on those two matters. So I would suggest moving forward, but of course it's your call.
Okay, awesome.
And
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Yes. So this is Eugene Hillsman, Deputy Director of the Office of Cannabis. I think if the broader concern around creating opportunities for technical assistance providers to provide feedback to the Office of Cannabis, we will have the opportunity for them to fill out that letter of intent to send that information directly to us. So unfortunately, it wouldn't kind of help us in this conversation today, but they would have the opportunity to deliver that feedback to us.
I just want to make sure that there is like an open line of communication from the community to us as decision-making folks, to be able to push more on this side. Also, okay, so I think this would be a good time to add as far as like the technical assistance providers and what they can provide. I would like to add mental health assistance or mental health services to like a list of services provided in this realm. I just know that there has been just so much impact on people's mental health over the past 6 months, generally, and then also as being someone that has actually had to interact with law enforcement, the jail system, family, etc. Like having like access to mental health support is really, really crucial, and in being able to hold space in my own mind for actually getting work done. And I know that as a person that also used to work as a case manager, mental health services were never prioritized enough in regards to impacted communities. So if this is a place when we're talking about healing from the war on drugs, add that to the services that would be available. Yes, Teresa, I see your hand.
Okay, so as far as like for the first two questions that the snapshot in time that we would be looking at and what including up into the planning stages, include that as well. I'm more inclined with like what Aaron was speaking to of opening it up. As in terms of the technical, just so I can wrap my mind around it. So the 4.9 million, is that also so grant funds going to be distributed from that money to the technical assistance providers? This is something separate?
Right.
Okay. Okay, well then I'll speak to it anyways, just because I feel, workforce development is very important to me. So as we know, with COVID and during the pandemic, communities of color are obviously most impacted once again. It is the same with cannabis. They were the most disenfranchised and the most negatively impacted. I think that, because of the COVID, as we hear, many people, like the number of equity applicants has dropped. There is difficulty even proceeding through the process. We know that there's going to be people looking out for new career opportunities because, the service industry and sector has been really hit hard and there's no telling when it will reopen. So that also includes mainly people of color that work in the service industry. So I would like to see, from my standpoint, an emphasis on workforce development grants to get people back to work, to get them, if they're seeking new careers, that connectivity and being able to provide for their families is key. So that's just my feeling on the technical assistance.
I'd like to add something if I have a chance to jump in.
Yes.
I think going hand in hand with the mental health and the workforce development aspects of how we inherit our relationships generationally. And we can have successful businesses, but if we don't know how to manage our money, that can be an issue. And so financial health is huge. If we looked at the possibility of some sort of financial coaching so that we could develop assets that can be passed down from generation to generation, because that's a really important thing of having a successful, strong generational family. Really.
Yes, I hear you. I guess we're like up for open discussion now in regards to these two questions, in regards to prioritization of things that are provided by technical assistance, as well as question number two, the question number one, which was who gets prioritized. Yes, Aaron.
So for the technical assistance provider questions, I believe that compliance, support in compliance is a key component to business being successful, particularly when they first get off the ground. And while that could theoretically be looped into business development, I like the order of the first two. I think grant process support and permit process support should be 1 and 2. But I actually believe that compliance support should be item 3 because no matter what facet of the industry you're in, metric and navigating, making sure that everything is done in a compliant way, and quality control for labels, quality control for intakes, transportation, all these things can really make or break a business in their infancy. And so I would rank that as, I would say compliance is something that should be added to technical assistance, and I would rank it 3rd personally. And then I just believe, workforce development and business development, it's hard to say which one of those should be a priority. But to Sarah's point, I think, business development is just so critical to building a business that's going to last. So I would rank business development 4th and workforce development 5th. And that's my input on the technical assistance side.
Would that link with workforce development?
compliance and metric, aren't these are these things that the workers would be doing as well? At least I've had some of my workers that are trained on metrics. So would that loop into workforce development?
It could, and I guess it really just depends on how we define that. Personally, workforce development for me is more obviously training, which compliance is a part of, but hiring, developing soft skills, roles and responsibilities of employees, job descriptions, all those types of things. To me is workforce, and compliance, I think in some industries would absolutely loop into workforce. I think in cannabis, because compliance is such a significant piece, and if you don't process a transfer through metric properly and that whole thing gets rejected, it's a pretty serious issue. And from my experience, I would say compliance would be kind of its own standalone. And I think that there are some specific technical assistance providers who could focus on this compliance, and they may or may not be folks who are experts in workforce. And I think some of the workforce experts may or may not have as much cannabis compliance experience. But again, I'm just speaking from my personal experience. It could be looped in, but I think it's so important that I would have it as a standalone.
Can you, for the OOC, can you guys remind us again how much money is going to the technical assistance providers?
Hi, everyone. This is Nikesh. Marissa, if you are speaking, your line is not muted. But I think that is and you guys can both speak to this better than I can, but it's a sum that we're still trying to figure out. There's some ongoing conversations with the grant providers about what exactly that total pool will look like.
Hi, this is Eugene. I think at the floor we'll have about $450,000, right? We may have an additional amount of money to provide to TA, but we will have at least 450.
Okay, so sorry, and that's just from the Bradford grant. That 450 is just from the Bradford grant. I thought there was. Okay, so there's 20% of the Bradford grant that goes to TA, and there's 10% of the GoBiz dollars that go to the TA. So
Yeah.
isn't it somewhere under close to 900K?
So that's what we're trying to resolve with the amount of technical assistance that Nikesh was referring to. So
Yeah.
for sure, we'll have the money that's available from the Governor's Office of Business and Economic and Development, and are in conversations about how much will be associated with the Bradford grant.
Okay. Yeah, because that would help too, to kind of see how to divvy some stuff up.
For sure.
Ranking order. Yeah. The grant processing support is going to be super important, just because we saw the, the permit navigation, or just the applications were kind of rough for people. So I know folks that did get to interact with Katie at OEWD, they had a little bit more help, but then her position was taken away, or she left the position, something happened in that position, and there was no more permit help on that one. So if they're definitely that's that priority. I hear workforce development is important. But the compliance piece, I think, around getting people trained up also on metric and other software and technical skill sets will really set folks apart, with their business, and to make that training available. I don't know if it would go under workforce development or under compliance, right? Because having even the workforce being trained up in the tech support around cannabis would also help to secure them higher level jobs than just bud tenders, And that's what we're really looking to do, is to create pathways for careers versus, you know, some jobs that they can kind of sustain themselves for a little while, you know? So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, the ranking order looks pretty solid in that regard, though.
And we will add some of the things that were brought up today, because this is why we want to have this conversation too, and to hear what people think are important things, like training and metric, like financial services. These are long-term things that are important. And keep in mind that these are technical assistance providers, so they're going to be organizations, separate organizations that are going to do this work to support the community. This isn't coming from the Office of Cannabis. This is not like, and I know you know that, but Katie was a position out of OEWD, which was an actual position with the city. This would be essentially a Katie with a nonprofit organization that would assist people navigate the process. So,
oh, okay.
So technical assistance dollars are to support nonprofits and organizations or individuals that can provide these services. And you want to find individuals and organizations that have enough capacity and bandwidth to be able to serve as many equity applicants as possible. And to your point, you guys are making great points. You want to make sure that the grant amount is a worthwhile amount to do that work, right? You apply for a grant, you want it to be a sizable amount so that folks can actually get this done and get as many equity applicants served as possible. But you're all making great points, and we are taking notes. This is part of the conversation we're hoping to have also through the letter of intent process, to see what the community thinks the needs are and what different service providers can actually provide. And then getting this grant opportunity out to, for example, financial service providers. I don't know that they know that there's this opportunity, so we want to make sure perhaps we can work with the Oversight Committee to get the information out to everybody to apply.
Very good. Definitely the financial education piece is essential and crucial too. Yes.
If I may just really briefly, just as I kind of clarify my thought process, there's an element of compliance that goes into getting permitted initially, not just through the city, obviously, but getting your state permits. And that there's pretty rigorous SOPs that have to be drafted, site maps, camera maps, all of those things. And then the transition into, actually operating and understanding how to use metric and understanding how to continue to engage with the state agencies. I do know that there are a couple of companies that we've used and other operators have used who will kind of help you with both ends of this. They'll help you with your applications, help you get all of that together, and then help the operators, set up checklists to stay compliant while they operate. I think that those things are enormously time consuming if the applicants try to do them themselves. And so I think that there are a couple of companies that sort of assist in this piece, and they could probably fall under permit process support and workforce development, but specifically around compliance. And I'd be happy to share some of the groups that I know do this and have done this for many operators. I think they would fit well with the technical assistance providers.
And Aaron, just to follow up on that point, thank you for that point. It's a good point. If you would let them know about the LOI process, and then they can let us know kind of those services, and then they can become informed about the process. We can't engage with them in that way, but they can learn about it and they can email us. We sent the LOI last Friday, I think, and we'll send it again after today.
Yeah, so it's just a matter of sending them the LOI information and then just fill that out and submit it.
Yeah, and that way, and let them also know they should sign up for a distribution list so that they can get information from our office, like when the RFP is available to apply for, that whole thing.
Taking notes now.
And that goes for everybody in the audience, in the community. Let's plug in everybody, all of our service providers, so we know what the universe is, and also super important for our non-voting members who are on this. I know you can't be part of the conversation, but to listen in on the conversation to hear what the industry needs.
speaking about our non-voting members, I know they don't get a chance to speak as much on these calls. I really appreciate that you make time to listen and hear what's going on. But do you guys want to self-identify yourselves if you guys are interested in becoming a part of this independent review committee?
Hi, this is Corey Pop from San Francisco Unified. Thanks, Nina. So I'm just curious to know exactly what the responsibilities and the commitment and sort of the expectations of the independent review committee would be. I'm sorry if I missed that, and what the group or the community would need or is looking for.
Great question.
Jeremy Schwartz here, Office of Cannabis. So with regards to the volume of proposals, we wouldn't be able to confidently answer that question because the purpose of circulating that letter of intent is so we can better gauge the amount of interested parties. With that being said, and similar to other RFPs throughout the city, the responsibility would be to review proposals and score them on a 100-point scale based on a enumerated criteria to score how suitable prospective TA providers are against the criteria and what would be expected of them to support social equity applicants in the program areas identified in the slide. So that's the general sense. It's reviewing proposals and scoring them. But beyond that, I wouldn't be able to answer, you can expect X number of proposals because this is a new program and process being launched for the very first time. I'm happy to flesh that out further, but maybe that helps to contextualize the conversation.
That's very helpful. Thanks. And to answer Nina's question, I don't know if folks want to volunteer or is this the time to, but I've done similar work for DPH and FUSD, so it's fine for me to do this for this committee as well. For DPH, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Anybody else want to? We need 3 more. Anybody else of the non-voting members want to self-identify themselves? Michael Christensen, I saw you unmute yourself.
Hi, Nina. I'm happy to support this in terms, especially there are kind of wild differences in permitting costs, as we've heard from one of our public commenters. In terms of actually participating, it's something that needs to be discussed between the Office of Cannabis and the Planning Department at a higher level, since it's a little outside of our currently established scope. So if the Office of Cannabis would like to discuss that with the Planning Department offline, we'd be happy to talk about that.
That'd be great.
Yeah, of course, this is Corey again. I have to confirm with at the school district, but yes.
Oh, Marissa, you're muted.
I was just saying thank you and will do. We'll follow up. I appreciate the support. I know the community really appreciates it.
Yes, thank you. Let's see. Anybody else want to self-identify themselves as support? Mohamed? Not just kidding. I know you got a lot of work.
It can also be a representative from your agency. So it doesn't necessarily have to be the rep on our oversight committee, although it is nice because you are connected and understand what the issues are and the challenges, but it can be a representative that you work closely with.
Oh, amazing. So yes, non-voting members, you can also appoint somebody that's in your department to handle it as well. So if you want to volunteer, that'd be fabulous. Okay, I think we can, people think about it. I don't want to put you on the spot right now. However, there are still some things for us to consider, which are these 2 questions. Here we go. The committee has recommended, okay, so where's the question? Would we like to include sole proprietors and single entity LLCs in the planning stage to receive the same amount? What do you guys think? based on the two models that you guys saw, should we include folks that were at planning or just the 5% that are, yes, Teresa?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, through the chair. So I thought I was kind of under the same impression you were, that that's what our original intent was for the larger portion to be able to, you know, reach the most people and spend the most money, right? So we give nothing back. So, you know, I guess I'll make a motion that it include them.
Okay. Anyone want to second that motion?
Second that.
Thank you, Jessica. All right. David, can you take us through a vote on that one?
I'm so sorry. I was muted and talking at my screen to no avail. I was if the motion could just be restated once more.
Teresa, you want to restate the motion?
Yes, that it'd be the second, so the second option that you presented, which would include sole proprietor, single entity LLCs in the planning stage. So hit it in the largest universe.
So,
I may be able to help with the framing of that.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
So, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, but what I'm hearing is that the committee would like the first tier to include sole proprietor and single entity LLCs in the planning stage, as well as those in build out and those that have been permitted.
Correct.
Got it. So the committee, the motion is that recommends that the first tier includes sole proprietors and single entity LLCs in the planning phase and the building out phase.
Those that have been permitted. You didn't say that.
Thank you. Okay, motion has been captured.
All right. You want to take us through that vote?
Yes, and it was seconded as well?
By Jessica.
Okay. So seat 9, Aaron?
Aye.
Seat 10, Jessica?
Aye.
Seat 13, Nina?
Aye.
Seat 15, Teresa?
Aye.
And seat 16, Sarah?
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously.
Amazing. All right, question number 2. The universe of eligible equity applicants in each tier must be determined by a set point in time. Would you like that date and time to be today's meeting, or on a date that Office of Cannabis begins to distribute funds or verified equity applicants? Can you clarify this? How does this actually work? What do you mean?
Sure, happy to provide a little bit of clarification. So in terms of the numbers for determining how many individuals will fit within the groups, we can either set that number based on today's meeting, which is reflected in the models that were shown, or that number can be calculated at a later point in time when the Office of Cannabis begins to actually distribute the grant funds to verified equity applicants. So it's either the numbers that you've seen today or down the line when the distribution of the Office of Cannabis begins.
Okay. Yeah, I would like to give people time, to get through. I mean, yeah, what do you guys think?
May I make a motion?
Yes, please.
I would like to make a motion that the date in for the eligible applicants be when the Office of Cannabis begins to distribute grant funds.
I second that motion.
All right, thank you, Jessica.
Sarah.
Sarah.
Okay, sorry. I just saw your finger unmuted. I'm sorry, but
it's cool.
I have these issues with my.
We're doing the best we can. We're all doing the best we can.
And Madam Chair,
See who's like unmuted, who's muted, and like it's just some people I can't see. It's okay. Yes, Nakai.
just as a point of clarification, Aaron, I'm not sure if I heard you say this, but did you say the universe of eligible applicants should be? So you're referring to the size of the applicants should be at a later point in time, right?
Yes. So the entire, the option for eligibility for these grants to be open until the date that the Office of Cannabis begins to distribute grant funds.
I think the key word there is just the size of the groups will be determined at a later point in time.
Okay.
Didn't we just decide the groups in the prior question?
I'm sorry, Aaron, can you say that again?
Didn't we just decide the size of the groups in the first question?
Right.
Right. What I mean is in terms of setting the size of the group. So when we're looking to determine how many people fit within these groups, that size will be determined at a later point in time when the Office of Cannabis begins distributing grant funds. So in the previous question, what we decided is that group would be inclusive of another subgroup. Here, we're deciding that the size of those subgroups will be determined when the Office of Cannabis begins distributing grant funds to verified equity applicants.
Correct, as opposed to today.
That's right. Okay, I just want to make sure the motion was clear for David.
Yeah.
And sorry, Jeremy Schwartz here to offer a point of clarification. Just as far as sequencing, I understand the thrust to be at a later point in time. Just floating whether that is at the time applications are made available to submit rather than disbursement, because we would know the universe at time of application. The funds would have to be calculated if it was a scenario where folks applied and then they move through the process and their categorization changes at the point of time of distribution. That was wordy, but I think I've made the point just to be sensitive to sequencing when to capture what the universe of eligible applicants look like.
So in fact, we're talking about on the date the Office of Cannabis begins to accept applications, or how should we word that?
You're asking how you would word that?
So what you're saying is attaching it to the date that the Office of Cannabis begins to distribute grant funds is going to be tricky because the distribution of those grant funds will need to have been sort of thought out. And so a stopping point to determine the universe a little bit prior to actual physical distribution would be more ideal for the OAC. Am I understanding that correctly?
Absolutely, well said. From an administration and calculating the amount of funds vantage point, and that still would meet what I'm hearing is the desire to kick the date to later on.
Sure.
But well said.
So what marker would you guys recommend, would the Office of Cannabis recommend? What is a point in time where, it's not today, but it would give the Office of Cannabis enough time to administratively be able to identify how to distribute these funds? Is that when?
Yeah, Aaron, it's a good question. And I think the best way to phrase it is when applications open.
Okay, so I will revise the, what is it that I am proposing? That the universe of eligible applicants in each tier be determined when what Nikesh just said happens.
When the application portal opens for the distribution of grant funds to verified equity applicants.
Got it.
Thanks, Aaron.
No problem.
And Jeremy, thanks for that clarification.
So I don't know that, let's see, the committee recommends that the universe of eligible applicants in each tier be decided when the application portal is.
When the application portal opens for the distribution of grant funds for verified equity applicants.
Distribution of funds for Okay. Does that look good?
Okay, so that is the motion that I have put forward.
And David, can you read that motion back one
Yes.
more time, just so everyone's clear about what they're
Yes.
voting on?
The committee recommends that the universe of eligible applicants in each tier be decided when the application portal opens for the distribution of funds for verified equity applicants. Does that work?
Yes.
Yes.
That works. I think that, you know, the point of clarity here would be that at that point in time, no other applicants would be able to move into these tiers. It depends on who's reading this, but for that point of clarity, that is when.
Right. And just like it mostly affects like the tier 1 folks, right? That's the limited, anyways, the LLCs. Sorry, the sole proprietor LLCs. Whatever.
I mean, you guys are, you're nailing it. It's absolutely right. And I really appreciate how you guys are leaning in on this and thinking about this in such a thoughtful way, because as you know, the community voice is super important, and we want to make sure that we are crafting this in a way that works for our community. So basically what we're saying, we have to, because it's the only way to administer this, but we have to have a snapshot in time. Whenever that snapshot's going to happen, whether it's today or it's a time in the future, that's going to be when people are designated. You are designated, you know, in planning, having been in planning at the time and a sole proprietor to then be eligible for a certain amount of money. And so that's why this matters. And it could be that you are a sole proprietor in part 1 that is not in planning today and is not in planning when the application process opens up. But maybe the next day you are in planning, right? And that's not going to change your status for the purpose of this grant. So that's what you guys are establishing here, and needs to be clear.
Right.
Yeah.
I wonder if using the word universe is not necessarily achieving clarity. I wonder if we can find a way to word this so it just simply states, you know, any operator who has successfully entered group 1 or 2 by the date the portal opens will be considered for the grant money. And that's kind of it. Just sort of.
So my understanding is that everybody is being considered for the grant money.
Right.
So all verified equity applicants who have applications in our process for a business are being considered, and that sole proprietors, the purpose of getting this sort of snapshot in time is to make a determination about who is considered a sole proprietor at the planning stage. Because if we don't take a snapshot, then essentially everyone is going to get through the planning stage at some point, right? So that's kind of what we're deciding. It's only just a number. It's a matter of determining who's at planning today, since the Oversight Committee has decided that planning should be included.
Right. And then wording this to make it clear to people that anybody who is in the planning stage or build out,
that's right,
or is a single entity sole proprietor LLC, by the time that the Office of Cannabis opens the portal, will be in that group, and anybody who has not made it into the planning stage by that time will not.
Correct. And specifically to sole proprietors being the issue, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm sorry, David, we're not making this easy for you.
Oh, I think that this is really important, and crafting the language is definitely part of the fun.
Yes.
And Aaron, if I may just make one suggestion, is the issue with the word universe, would it be resolved if we changed it to the number of eligible applicants in each tier must be determined, and then the rest of it saying the same?
Boom.
Okay, perfect.
Makes sense.
Okay, what do you have, David?
So it would be Nikesh's amendment right there. It was the committee recommends that the number of eligible applicants in each tier be decided when the application portal opens for the distribution of funds. Should it be that the number of eligible applicants designated to a tier by entering the planning phase, or Bill, do we need a little more right there?
Just as a point of clarification, I think that because we're referring to each tier and those each tiers have been decided by the previous recommendation, it may not be necessary to actually carve that out. And so you could end it with when the portal opens for the distribution of grant funds for verified equity applicants. I think it's key to add that grant funds for verified equity applicants to the end of that recommendation.
Okay. So the committee recommends that the number of eligible applicants in each tier be decided when the application portal opens for the distribution of grant funds for verified equity applicants.
That works. I think that's clear and concise.
So as of right now, just to be clear, there's like, so there's 10 people that like fulfill that three buckets, right, of where they are at in the process. If we leave it open until let's say around like beginning of October when the process gets opened up, or like end of September, October, is that correct? Is that then it allows like maybe one or two, maybe three more people to get into that pool, essentially.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's what we're trying to accomplish.
That's what we're trying to do. Cool. Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Yeah.
I make a motion to David.
To do that.
You could say the motion as stated.
Yes.
There you go.
Yes, and then make the motion as stated.
Hey, do we have a second?
Second.
Sorry.
Teresa.
Was that who I'm sorry, who was the second? Teresa?
Teresa.
Thank you, just for the minutes.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, let me pull up my list. So we'll move to a vote. Aaron, seat 9.
Aye.
Seat 10, Jessica.
Aye.
Seat 13, our chair, Nina.
Aye.
Seat 15, Teresa.
Aye.
Seat 16, Sarah.
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously.
Awesome. Yeah, look at us getting things done. Thank you. Thank you guys.
Darren, just a time check. We've got about 14 minutes left in the meeting. 2 more questions to get through. So just throwing that out there.
Yep. Okay, so the other question that I kind of want to go back to the prioritization list on the there you go, on the tech assistance. Cool. Can we add to this list financial education and mental health support?
Yes. If you I'm not if I have a running list from the previous conversation.
Uh-huh.
I'm not, if I can share my screen, let me see. I might need Jeremy, can you pass me the
Yeah, I'll need
privileges?
one of my colleagues, Ray or Nikesh.
One moment, David.
Yes, because it sounded like.
All right, all yours.
Okay. Let's see. So we had this additional list. So maybe I can just do a quick recap of where we are at. You mentioned access to mental health services. We talked a little bit about the importance of workforce development. There was a call for sort of the emphasis and importance of that, as well as financial coaching. And then Aaron discussed the the possibility of making compliance its own standalone. Maybe, and I just want to maybe offer this question to you all. It sounded like, at least for the first two, from what I gleaned, that there was consensus about these first two, and that may not be true, but if it is true, then we can sort of check those off and then just look at the subsequent ones. So maybe, Nina, I'll kick it back to you to verify.
Yes. Well, I mean, does the first two, as far as like priority, asking in ranking order, what do we believe that technical assistance providers can provide to the greatest benefit? The first two, like we've seen in the process, the support around getting through the applications and just like the systems navigation thing is always really important. So we do want to put that up as a higher tier, but the ones that are beneath it, as far as workforce development, are you okay in the ranking spot that it's in? Business development, are you guys okay with it? Like the ones that are fall underneath the first two, where do we think we should move those priorities?
Well, and also there was a call to pull out compliance, and so I'm not sure that the idea was thrown out there, but I'm not sure if we determined that that was what the committee wanted to do.
Yeah, biz dev and compliance are kind of two separate things. So.
I would propose that instead of making this list longer, I don't know if subheadings are going to complicate the situation, but I believe that permit process support should entail more than just the San Francisco permitting process, because the state permitting process is pretty significant and arduous. And I think that
permit and license support. Yeah.
Yes. And at that point, there's a sort of a compliance element that's added in there. And so then I think that in workforce development, as long as some element of cannabis specific compliance is included there as well, then I think we've accomplished getting that piece in there without needing to create another category. And at that point, I am comfortable with the order.
Yeah.
Sorry, just to clarify, was cannabis specific compliance, that was to be under workforce development or business development?
I think workforce works well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there was this. So I think this is the comprehensive list of the ideas that came up.
Yeah, I would like to move access to mental health services to be in between workforce development and biz dev. Like to add it to, like, move it to D. And then financial education and coaching, I think, should be a part of business development. And not as its own thing. Because, like, you're not going to have good business development if you don't include the financial education piece to work through your models. Yes.
Madam Chair, it may also just be worth noting that to the extent that these additional program areas would be permissible uses for the technical assistance funds, that's not ultimately a decision that's controlled by the Office of Cannabis. There's a process that we have to go through to see if they are permissible uses. So we can certainly take them as recommendations, but there is always the possibility that the sources of the funding may come back and say that's not a permissible use or it doesn't fall under one of the approved uses.
Well, I think we had some discussion around that outside of this, and so we would need for the oversight committee to maybe pen a letter to the state in order to advocate for them to include certain areas.
That's my understanding as well. But I think that doesn't preclude us, at least now, or it doesn't preclude the committee, at least now, from taking a vote on two things: one, the order, and then the additional categories.
Okay.
And then we can, based on that letter and the outcomes, we'll have a better sense of what approved additional uses are versus which ones didn't quite make it.
So we then make a motion. And yeah. I would like to make a motion to approve this order as written.
That's great.
I'll second.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
And David, before you continue, Madam Chair, you spoke to the order. Do you also motion for the additional category, motion to add the additional categories that have been discussed as well?
Yes, I would like to make a motion to approve the rank order with the additional categories.
Thank you.
Okay. So the committee recommends the following order, including additional categories as stated below. And then we've got the grant process order, permanent license support, workforce development, access to mental health services, business development. So this has been motioned and seconded, so we'll move to a vote. Okay, seat 9, Aaron.
Aye.
Seat 10, Jessica.
Aye.
Seat 13, Nina.
Aye.
Seat 15, Teresa.
Aye.
And seat 16, Sarah.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Amazing. Okay, quick question for the OOC. For the next tier of distribution, because we did hear some public comment that there's concern that there'll be there are people that are still in need that are not sole proprietors, but and don't qualify for the very first tier as far as prioritization. But when will we see the next round of folks getting processed through? How soon will everybody else potentially get distributions of grant? Like after the first tier?
Nina, the question you're asking is an administrative one, right? So after we've prioritized group 1, when is it likely that group 2 may start being processed for their order in the process?
Correct.
Okay. Jeremy, do you have a sense of that? I know it's hard to predict that exact date because there are many pieces that are still up in the air, but do we have an approximate timeline of when we might move to group 2?
Sure. I mean, ultimately, we want to process all of these folks as quickly as possible and to at least set them up in the system where they're able to convey their receipts for reimbursable expenses. As far as the specific timeline, I don't want to mislead the committee by speculating, but ideally it'll flow right after we get through the 10 or so folks. They'll be in the system, they'll have receipts, and then we work our way through the line. So ultimately, hoping to get folks funds by the end of the year, and depending on where they are in those groups. But I can't anticipate there would be a significant lag time between 1 and 2. We would just go from 1 to 2. We'll have more confidence in an answer as more time goes by. But all to say is that we're going to endeavor to get them funds as quickly as possible once the first group is taken care of.
Okay, so essentially everyone can just apply when the applications or the process opens up, everyone can apply, and there would be like a indicator on the application to say like what, to indicate what tier you would fall, or like whether you're a sole proprietor or if you are like if you're a 50% owner or 40% owner or whatever. They'll just indicate on the application, and that's how it could be sorted out. Is that how it essentially is going to go?
Absolutely. Trying to set people up so by the time their time comes, that there's not additional paperwork to fill out beyond conveying receipts or invoices. That's certainly the effort.
Okay. Sounds great. We got 2 minutes left, you guys. Nikesh, was that we got through the two major questions that we needed to on this item, correct?
So there are 4 major questions. There's one left. We've gone through 3. The final question is with respect to the independent review committee and the non-voting members that the oversight committee would like to see, or interest from the non-voting members who would like to be on that committee.
So we have somebody from, we have somebody from the school district, and then we have planning. Who else? Yes, hold on.
If you don't mind, and so as not to put anyone on the spot, I think people probably do need to run it up the chain. I'm happy to send a formal invite from the Office of Cannabis, and that way folks can do the necessary process, and then we can report back kind of where we are and can keep the conversation moving.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. I know that, like, in order to make these decisions, to allocate time and resources, not like the decision of just one person. So that makes sense. Cool.
Oh, I am the chair, Madam Chair.
Teresa, go ahead.
Is there any way we could see the list of offices? And does it have to be like ones that are non-voting? Is Office of Economic and Workforce Development do they have a non-voting seat, or?
She asked about that too. They're not on our committee, but maybe Marissa, we talked about this the other day. Can you refresh the answer on that? Because
so yes, we can reach out to OEWD as well. I think the thought was it's nice to keep it as part of the oversight committee, and that would be kind of moving away from that. So if it looks like we can't meet the 4 volunteers from the oversight committee, non-voting members, because it's a nice way to engage and be a part of this process, especially since they can't be as active as the others on the panel. We can lean out and look for other folks who'd like to.
So speaking to that, can I just, from listening from public comment, I'm not trying to exclude anybody, but it would be preferred probably if PD wasn't included in that.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So it looks like we've arrived at the 3 of the 4 recommendations with an action step for the OOC to follow up. Director Rodriguez suggested sending an official letter to reach out to departments. So it looks like we can perhaps move forward.
Very cool. All right. Thank you guys so much for getting through all of that. I know it's not completely done yet, but we did make a dent in it. So thank you all so much for being focused. We're gonna move on to our item number 6, which is essentially, general public comment. Okay, so we're gonna open up the floor for general public comment. This is where members of the public can, whatever it is that is on your mind about cannabis, the cannabis industry, things that we haven't covered, things that we should cover. Now is the time for you guys to be able to call in and give your input. So we are going to wait for some folks to get into the queue. Remember, it is *3 if you're calling in.
And Madam Chair, if we could actually just hold that for 1 second so we can invite the members who recused themselves back. Just 1 moment.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you. They have been patiently waiting. Jesse's back with us. Got to get Ali and Sean back on.
Just texted them, so I think they're should hopefully be joining us.
And David, maybe in the interest of time, giving them a call might be the most efficient pathway right now. Thanks.
So let me see. Okay, I can go ahead and do that.
And we got one.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Just Ali to come back. I just texted him, so hopefully he finds his way back. Okay. Oh, there he is. There he is.
Hi, sorry.
All right. Hey, we have everybody. This has been a while. Okay, cool. So Ray, so just to let you guys know, our committee members coming back. We finished up item 5. We're on to item 6, which is general public comment, and then we will be setting the agenda items for the next meeting. So Ray, if we could open up public comment, that would be beautiful.
Sure thing, Madam Chair. So far, there are 3 individuals waiting in the line, and we also have 1 submitted written question, and we will start with the speaker waiting in line. Mr. Brown, your 2 minutes starts now. Please proceed.
Yeah, well, my question is regarding the funding that's needed for us who's in that second process. When can we expect to get some funding?
Okay. Sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your comment, Mr. Brown. Madam Chair, let's move on to the next speaker. Hello, caller. Your 2 minutes starts now.
Thank you. Equity group.
You're breaking up. Can't hear you. Ed?
Madam Chair, should we move on?
Yeah.
Okay. Hello, caller. Your 2 minutes starts now.
Is this me?
Yes. Please proceed, sir.
I want to thank this is Charlie Pappas, Divinity Tree. I'm a closed dispensary by Obama and Eric Holder and Melinda Haig. I hope to get in the permit process eventually. I'm just going to offer some criticism, which I have before you. Your agenda is really weak. There's not enough in it beforehand and you don't have any minutes listed. So I would please hope you correct that in the future. You'll get more public input and communication. So that's my 2 cents. So continue your good work.
Thank you. We have minutes.
Madam Chair, we are going to move on to the next speaker. Hello, speaker. Your 2 minutes starts now.
Hey, this is Ed. Sorry about that. I got disconnected. Thanks again. I'll be brief. Just wanted to say thank you guys for all your work, hard work on this. I know this process is not easy. It's unprecedented being able to get state funds, to cannabis actors, mostly individuals, right? So I really, really thank you, every single one of you guys on the committee for making time, to put some brainstorming together. I would want to just put out a little bit of thought of how we can kind of make sure that some of these grant funds are going to the right people and people who have the right mindset and people who, are going to be in this for the right reasons and not just because the city is determining to give out money to people. There's been a lot of folks that I've helped along the way who've been there and struggled and, would like to see the greater portion of that funds. And for me personally, just not to see it watered down by people who are going to just kind of game the system or not really serious. So would like to see that come up next time. Again, thank you guys for all your time, and I'll look for the next call. Thank you.
Madam Chair, at this moment, there's no individual waiting in the line to speak. So we will transition to written comment. So at this moment, we received 1 written comment from John Aradia, and the comment reads, I work with a social equity applicant and our application is currently undergoing review through BBI. We have been in process with BBI, planning, and other San Francisco departments since September 2019. with our funds running low, I request 1. More resources being funneled to reviewing agencies to expedite review of applications. 2. Grants be directed ASAP to social equity applicants who are currently incurring expenses such as city impact fees, salaries, and rent. 3. And a waiver of fees, including but not limited to departmental review fees and transit impact fees. With all the news regarding DPI corruption and grift, please do right by us equity applicants who are being sucked dry daily with no light at the end of the tunnel. At best, please help us with fee waiver and grants. At minimum, please have DBI officers respond to our email. Despite multiple emails and calls, we have been waiting for a response email from Cyril at DBI for 4 months. Madam Chair, there's no other written comment in the queue, so that concludes our public comment section.
All right, thank you. Okay.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
For people that it's kind of, it's rough to get the general public comments when we have questions because we aren't allowed to answer them. Where can people submit questions that they have to get answered? As far as OOC or RDA, where do they send that?
Sorry, Jessica, would you mind repeat your question one more time? You're breaking up.
Yeah, so it's rough when we have general comment and people are asking questions because we're not allowed to answer those questions. So where can people submit questions to get answers?
Sure. So here, I would say for any emails, inquiries each committee member receive, please direct them to David from RDA. And depending on the nature of the questions, he will funnel the questions that's for OOC. If that's for the oversight committee, he will address the question with the appropriate party.
Okay, cool. All right, and just a reminder too for people that are in here watching that you can find all of the meeting materials at officeofcannabis.sfgov.org/meeting/oversight. But that's where you can find all of the meeting materials, including the minutes from last time and our agendas. That's not answering a question, just generally letting everyone know.
As well as all materials provided to committee members leading up to the meeting. So yesterday, there was a memo that was also included and is available to the public. So anything the committee receives prior to the meeting is on the website as well. Thanks, Jessica.
And just as another point of clarification for folks, the LOI, I know it was sent out in a newsletter. Is that also posted on the Office of Cannabis website for people to access?
Jeremy Schwartz here. That correspondence is not on the website, but we will freshen it up for those on our distribution channels. So if folks haven't received it, sign up to our distribution list. And when we send it out, likely tomorrow morning, to make sure it's as visible as possible, that you could forward it on to interested parties as well. So likely by tomorrow sometime, we'll get that out again.
And the OOC continues to field questions too. Feel free to reach out to our office and ask away. We've been answering questions about grants and other things. So feel free to reach out to us as well. You can always email us.
Cool. All right. So there's no more public comment. Just to be clear, there's nobody else in the queue or no other things in the chat.
That is correct, Madam Chair.
Okay. That case, public comment is closed. And we are moving on, to number 7 on the agenda, which is setting agenda items for the next meeting, which I'm hoping is like next month, as opposed to a month, as opposed to like a month from that, instead of in October. I'm hoping that it's in September.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. It would be good if because if you look at the minutes from our last meeting, there's a couple of points like 6, the policy recommendations that we tabled to today, but then we have to move on to the next one. And for us to have do an effective job, I think between what you guys have done with the grants, if we can apply that kind of same enthusiasm to the legislation recommendations, then at least we have 2 really good things to do by the end of the year, hopefully. So yeah, that would be cool. And I would like to also make a motion to carry point 6, discussions of policy recommendations, over to next month's agenda.
Okay. Okay, it's policy recommendations. Who else has items that should go on to next month's meeting?
I just want to make sure that taxes, the upcoming implementation of the cannabis tax is, that might be under policy recommendations, but the clock is ticking on that. And I know that the Retailers Alliance is going to focus, but I really want to make sure that that's prioritized as well, because it's going to affect every single operator.
Jessica, I saw your hand raised.
Yeah, I wanted to introduce to do some kind of LPA training with OEWD. I'm really glad that during this process that we've talked a lot about how we can make sure that these businesses are able to flourish. But especially given how this pandemic has been, I think it's important that we bring the focus to our workers also. So I'd really like to see a presentation from OEWD on labor peace agreements, what those even mean, and just do some more, an educational piece basically for all of us.
Definitely. Need some more education around that piece. And also how, just because I've also heard some complaints also from workers in the industry, and they're wondering how to get support there. So that would be fantastic. Marissa, yes.
Yeah, and I think to that point, and Aaron made a good point earlier about the importance of preparing our industry and individuals around metric. I know finance was something that was brought up. So when you think about this work, labor and kind of rules around unions and unionizing, collective bargaining, these are all really important things that people need to understand and know. And you don't want, you could find yourself in a situation that you didn't know, and you want to make sure that that information is out there. So I think that is also a good thing as far as educational support around LPAs. For Article 33, it's a little different. Not until you have 20 employees that you even think about this, but for Article 16, as more and more are rolling out, it's 10 or more employees. And so that's a different threshold, and it's important to kind of have this at the back of mind. So I think that is important. So thank you, Jessica, for bringing that up.
I'm not too sure if this goes under policy recommendations, but shared licensing permit language. We need to have a conversation about that still.
I think a lot of what you, Aaron, and I have been talking about will probably go under policy, but we should list them out individually, because these are really important issues that we should really tackle. The shared licensing, the taxes. I think one of the public comments was really true about DBI. I think we really need to address conditional use permits and speeding this up for equity applicants. They don't have the money to keep paying rent, waiting for an answer. So yeah, we should add all the individual points to our policy discussion.
Yeah, definitely there needs to be a discussion about DBI, because it seems like one of the longest holdups is in DBI, and there's just been repeated complaints in that area. So if we can get
it actually, there's one possibly plan checker in particular whose name came up a couple of times.
Yeah.
People have not been getting responses for some months. And if we have an opportunity to hear directly from DBI what the bottleneck is there, I'd be interested to hold them to task.
Yeah, agreed.
Guys, I have everyone to head up. My laptop is at 3%, and I am offsite with no charger. So I may just disappear shortly here, and hopefully that's okay.
Yeah, we're pretty much done. I was just waiting for us to finish out the.
I'll hide it till the juice runs out.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Any other agenda items that you guys would see? So we would have our general update from the Office of Cannabis, a presentation from OEWD around labor, a check-in with DBI, and then for us to dig into policy recommendations. Does that sound like it reflects what was just talked about for the agenda for next meeting? Does that feel good to people?
And the OOC is excited to give updates, as I think a number of people on this panel know.
I think Sean had a comment. He was raising his hand.
Oh, cool, Sean. I'm not able to see everything.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
So a couple things. One, I'm kind of getting a little irritated about being off the panel on discussions, and I understand about we're talking about the money stuff, but then I'm missing out on a whole discussion on what's going on. So I'm getting irritated about that. The other thing is that can we also too put on the agenda about protecting these dispensaries that's going on with these robberies and these looting and stuff like that? Is that on the agenda to have a discussion about that with SFPD?
Yeah, that came up. There was a presentation on that earlier today, earlier before. That was the item number 3 on our agenda today.
I heard the call, but I just couldn't comment on what was going on.
Ongoing meetings. First one is August 18th. That's going to be specifically for that with SFPD, and then we can decide how much more we dig into those direct conversations, so that we can leave this time for the policy recommendations and give focus to actually hitting those the public safety issues around protecting your guys' businesses on a separate call.
So on August 18th, Sean, there's going to be a meeting dedicated entirely to SFPD and next steps. And in fact, there will be ongoing meetings. So this will be an ongoing meeting, cannabis and SFPD.
So is the 18th is going to be with the oversight committee, or is just
no, that's just the industry at large. So this way, there's no recusing. There's nothing. It's open meeting.
Okay, great.
We'll send more info out about it.
All right.
One last item that should be definitely towards the bottom of the list, and I will understand if other things take priority and we're not able to get to it. But there was the CARE report that was introduced that would significantly alter the way that indoor cultivators are allowed to operate, primarily by forcing them all to transition to LEDs by 2023. It's a pretty big issue for cultivators, particularly pre-existing cultivators. And I would just hope that maybe there's something that we can work with the OOC on, but just a letter of support in some of the revisions that the industry is putting forward to make this more reasonable. Again, I know we have other priorities, and this only encompasses one facet of the industry, but be remiss if I didn't bring it up.
Right.
And I have one small thing that I would really like some sort of seal from the city, if we can discuss that again, that verifies equity operators. So the ones that we are fostering and giving grants to and trying to get off the ground, so they also get a little bit of a marketing push, because it's a hard thing for equity operators to have. So just some sort of seal that is official, that it's a San Francisco verified equity operator. I think local dispensaries and the supply chain will benefit from that alike.
We can talk about the equity trade certification offline, but we'll talk about it. Cool. Okay, because we don't have a lot, I mean, you guys know how much time we actually have, and then how much time discussion happens, and how much time public comment takes. So we kind of have to whittle this down into things that we can actually be able to touch for next meeting. The care report, as far as the impact, that's something that is that
It's case reports.
okay, case report.
Yeah.
Is that something? Is that time sensitive? We said we have until 2023, right? But
No,
I mean,
there's a public comment period that ends very soon, actually.
got you. Okay, got you. When is that? Do you know when the end of that public comment is?
I think it's probably going to be before our next meeting.
Oh, okay. Okay. So the things that seem most pressing, though, is our policy recommendation conversation, right? Because that's been pushed off the agenda maybe like 3 or 4 times already. So we'd like to give that priority, and also definitely the DBI check-in to find out what the heck is going on at DBI. If we can do that, that would be it'd be really good. It would be great.
That's well prioritized.
Okay, good. Yeah. Okay. And then the labor peace agreement, the LPA education and presentation. If we can get that, that would be really good as well. So we have general update, presentation from OEWD, DBI report out, and then the policy recommendations. And that would be our next agenda. How does that sound to folks? Yeah?
That sounds great.
Okay, so I make a motion to approve this agenda for the next one. And do we have a date for the next meeting? OOC?
Always do the raffle.
I think you guys have to go through the process you go through where you pick a date amongst yourselves.
Oh, okay.
You'd like us to choose it.
We need it. We need it.
And Nina, I think what we'll do is we'll have David send out a doodle poll. We'll go through the same channels as before and select a date. That way we're not.
Is everybody okay with first week of September? And then you guys can decide from there. Teresa, you look.
I have to check with my calendar. I do my own calendaring.
Madam Chair, this is right here.
Yeah.
So thinking about the first week of September, just one reminder that it's right after the holiday weekend of the Labor Day.
Okay, so some people might not necessarily be around. Okay, we'll
Maybe
go
last week of August.
Have the last week of August.
I love the enthusiasm. This is great. Let's get back together.
There's so much that we have to cover. There's so much, and I know, like, leaving between. Teresa, did you?
So long as we do a poll, so I could check my calendar. I mean, as you know, the city budget talks, all kinds of discussions being conferred, COVID. So yeah, I'll have to. I can't predict, but yeah, doodle poll would be great.
And Madam Chair, I think one of the other factors will just to see what the availability is of some of the other agencies that we want to report during the meeting itself. So OEWD, just to see what their availability is.
Okay, sounds good. I guess we'll beautiful. In that case, okay, make a motion to approve the calendar. The agenda as is.
Second.
Thank you, Jessica. Do you want to take that vote?
Okay. Seat 8, Ali.
Aye.
Seat 9, Aaron.
He got kicked. His computer died.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Aaron. Seat 10, Jessica.
Aye.
Seat 12, Sean.
Aye.
Thank you.
Seat 13, Nina.
Aye.
Seat 14, Jesse.
Aye.
Seat 15, Teresa.
Aye.
And seat 16, Sarah.
Aye.
Okay, the agenda passes unanimously.
Cool. All right. So, folks in the OLP, is there anything that we have to cover before I adjourn this meeting?
Just thank you guys so much for the hard work. This is super important and we appreciate it. You know, a lot of those other items have been pushed because of COVID and other things. And so we'll get that all back rolling and the momentum built up again around policy issues. But I know these grants are super important to the community and I appreciate you guys leaning in and really helping us develop that. And I know it's been frustrating to those members on the committee who have not been able to participate. Next meeting won't be like that. So thank you for your patience and understanding. But it's great. And I think that the Oversight Committee is doing a lot of really, really good work. So, and then to those non-voting members, we will be sending a formal letter soon so that you can, if you'd like to, volunteer to be on the panel to decide who should be our technical assistance providers. So thank you so much.
All right.
Madam Chair, before we sign up, did we need to open for general comment for agenda 9? I mean, for 7? Did we already do that?
Oh, yes. Right. Okay. All right. Before we adjourn, general public comment in regards to the agenda itself.
Madam Chair, so far we have one individual waiting in line, and I'm
Okay.
going to pull this up. Hello, caller, your 2-minute starts. Hello, Michaela. You are unmuted, and your 2-minute public comment section starts.
Now?
Yes.
Go for it. We're here.
Madam Chair, this individual just unmuted herself, so I believe it was the hand was raised accidentally. So, which means that concludes our public comment section.
Okay. All right. Closing public comment. Thank you all for your hard work and focus, and I'm really looking forward to digging into these policy recommendations with you guys on the next one. So thank you all, and have a great rest of the day.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care. Bye.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye.